Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Hayyakum Allah.
What a night!
What a night. We are live at the American Islamic College tonight with some of our beloved sisters and colleagues here at the college. We know that the world has probably become weary of listening to two bearded men drone on and on about what they think the Qur'an might or might not mean. And so we invited some of our colleagues to join us this evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, also, we're doing this really because we've fallen a little bit behind. We are beginning Surah number 47, and be mindful that this is the last night, and there are 114 surahs in the Qur'an.
Yeah.
114. So on the last night, we have more than half of the surahs still remaining, because the first ones were much longer and they start to get shorter and shorter. Plus, we're a little bit behind, so it looks daunting. But we're going to spend several hours here. We were told by the crew,
We're having a little bit of a conversation about this.
But I don't want to cut it short. But we will see how the Spirit moves us. The way that I think we might do it is just a one-line introduction, just because there's some new people here.
I think everyone should introduce themselves.
Yeah, and if you look at it, so there's over 50 surahs left, right? If you spend 2 minutes on each, that's already almost 2 hours. 2 minutes on each. So we're not going to be able to cover everyone, and we'll do some broad introductions of groups of surahs, and then maybe glide through and not touch each of them, but just point out maybe interesting things.
Unless there's
one or the
something.
other. Well, see, there you
Glimmering. A jewel. A jewel glimmering.
This indicates all-nighter to me. just that. But let's maybe we start. Sister Özlem, you want to start with the introductions? This is our registrar.
Yes, and director of admissions.
Yes, I'm the registrar and director of admissions, and they told me I should be here tonight.
It was voluntary.
This is entirely voluntary.
It was the only way we were going to get our mugs. We had to
grab our
on
mugs.
campus tonight.
So I've been with AIC since 2011,
Yes.
and I love working here.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
And we love the fact that she's working here. So if anyone who is watching this in real time or in unreal time, if anyone's ever interested in applying for admission, Sister Özlem is your primary point of contact.
Yes. You can email me, registrar@aicusa.edu.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Naza Kawaja. I'm the Director of Recruiting and Communications here at American Islamic College. I help with some of the recruitment efforts and working the conventions and fairs and college days and things like that. I also help the college with the social media posts and creating a newsletter. So if you have been bombarded, it's my fault and I apologize, but that is a little bit about what I do here. Alhamdulillah.
Well, but I loved when you said last night, you can, if you miss Ramadan Unscripted, you can binge watch
You
it.
can binge
Yes,
watch
binge
this
watch
entire series. Yes.
It's on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I suppose if you come to any of our recruiting events, ISNA, college fairs, and we have a booth, you'll probably encounter Sister
Absolutely.
Nazha. Yeah.
And she represents us with such joy and such eloquence and such passion for what we're doing here that we're very blessed to have an ambassador out in the wider community representing us so well. Excellent.
Going this way?
Yes.
This way.
I think everyone's they know us and they're tired of us already, so.
All right, I'm Stephanie Mirza. I'm the Student Support Services Coordinator here at American Islamic College, and I'm just happy to be here. I think it's going to be an interesting evening.
Alhamdulillah.
And I'm Balsam Haddad. I'm the head librarian and director of college campus and collection. I'm glad to be an IIC family member, and that's it.
Excellent.
Yeah, great.
So we have a little United Nations here,
We do.
right? So we have Turkey and Pakistan and Iraq, right? And
The United States of America.
And two of questionable European origin, yes, and Pakistan again. And this is one of the amazing things about the American Islamic College is that we are not only ethnically diverse, but we're also diverse in terms of the different denominations, different parts of the Muslim mosaic that we all come from. And so we're coming together in a ecumenical, inclusive community of joy and common purpose. And so this is illustrated even by this little sampling you have before you tonight. But this is one of the reasons why working here is just such a joyous and wonderful experience. Alhamdulillah.
So we're beginning with Surah Muhammad.
Yes.
Surah number 47. But it's also called Qital,
Yeah.
which is warfare.
Yeah. Fighting.
So it's a tough surah that we're beginning with. This is the first in a group of 3 Medinan surahs.
Right, because we've just had several Meccan surahs,
Right.
and we're going to go back to a string of 7 more, right?
Right,
Meccan
after
surahs,
this.
Right.
And so, and so this again caps off this one cluster of Meccan Medinan surahs, with this as being the Medinan group. The sequence of 3, just by way of introduction, begins with Muhammad, where permission is given to fight. The next surah is Al-Fath, where the victory is on the horizon. And then the surah after that is Al-Hujurat, the chambers, when the Prophet ﷺ is, after victory, governing, and some etiquette is being given on how the community should deal with the leader. So it's a lovely group of 3 thematic surahs, but this is a tough one.
Yeah.
And it begins directly, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَصَدُّوا عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Those who, the ingrates, that's what we've been using.
The ungrateful rejectors.
Right. And who hinder people from the path of Allah. أَضَلَّ أَعْمَالَهُم. That their deeds will God render astray. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. By contrast, those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do righteous deeds, وَآمَنُوا بِمَا نُزِّلَ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ, and who believe in what has been sent down to Muhammad. So this is one of 4 places where Muhammad is mentioned by name. Did you know this?
Yeah.
Muhammad is mentioned by name only 4 times in the Qur'an. And a 5th, he's mentioned as Ahmad, by his other the form of Muhammad. That we'll see in Surah Al-Fath. But the others, we have actually seen one in, it was in Ali Imran. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ. وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ.
Yeah.
Muhammad was only a messenger. And messengers have gone before him. If he were to die or to be slain, will you turn your backs on
Right.
it. And then the other one was in Surah Al-Ahzab, which was وَمَا كَانَ مُحَمَّدٌ أَبَا أَحَدٍ مِّن رِجَالِكُمْ.
That's right.
Muhammad is not the father
Of any of your men.
And this is the 3rd reference. And it says, those who believe in بِمَا نُزِّلَ عَلَى Muhammad. And the 4th will come in the very next surah. Muhammadur Rasulullah وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ. So this is a reference to him, and contrasting the ungrateful from the believers.
But this is very unusual. You know, usually the Qur'an, the surahs will begin with extolling God's power and God's might, or extolling the Qur'an itself. But here it's a very sobering beginning, and this marks I think a very sobering moment in the life of the community. And again, we're always doing this dance with the Qur'an's relationship to historical events, and it's not contained in those events. It's not generated by those events, but the Qur'an does interact with history that's happening on the ground. And so this first one is just fresh after they arrive in Medina, and they know that there's war is coming.
War is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, a couple of verses down, when you encounter إِذَا لَقِيتُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who have rejected
And are fighting against you, really. I mean, this is...
No, they're fighting against you.
Yeah.
فَضَرْبَ الرِّقَابِ. So smite their necks. So it's very... This is when people read verses like this. you can see that they're like, oh my gosh, Islam is
Violent religion.
is a violent religion.
Yeah.
So how do you hear this? Given everything you know, obviously as believers, if anyone wants to say anything, this is unscripted. So
Yeah, this sounds good. So yeah, don't
don't be bashful.
yeah, don't be shy.
What is the ayah?
And so this is in Surah Muhammad, the fourth ayah. But you know, when people come to you and they come to you with the assumption or the accusation that your religion is just it's a violent, primitive, barbaric religion, and we know that Islamophobic idea is all around us, and that there are lots of people who are willing to just cherry pick a verse out of context, or a verse here, or a verse there, and so how do we deal with that? And I know we can talk Quranically how we deal with that, but you know, I think for most Muslims, when they think of their own religion, like, what are the first words that come to your mind? Fighting? No.
No. Peace.
Peace,
Peace.
right?
Yeah.
وَمَا
Yeah.
أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ.
exactly.
Okay.
So Allah
We-
sent Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for mercy, for
Mercy.
العالمين.
So we have peace, we have mercy.
Yeah.
And this is important for people to see, that when we're taught, like, that's what we're taught, and that's how we experience our religion. And I think all traditions are like that. Sometimes in my classroom, I try to explain this with, you know, students will pick a verse and say, well, how do you understand this? But it'll be completely out of context, right? And so, you know, I said, look, you're an American, right? You don't think of your country as a violent country. I mean, I'll just be frank. But there's a context for war. And I think that it's often badly abused, the militarism, you know, and the whole economic incentives that have made it far more, you know,
The military-industrial complex.
But you don't think of your country like that, but that's one aspect of it. And if people only looked at you through the prism of that, you know, it would be a distortion of how you conceive of yourself and your ideals. And so don't do that to other traditions as well.
Yeah.
There's a context for this. It develops in the face of extreme opposition and persecution, and now permission is being given to engage in warfare, so that the community that has been expelled from its homes can defend itself.
That's right. And so we saw that before, this idea that in Surah Al-Hajj, right, where permission is given to fight. I think that was the very first permission that was granted, and that permission is given to fight to those against whom war has already been made, right? And remember, and these are the ones who, if we establish them in the land, that they will command what is good, and they'll forbid what is evil, and they will establish, you know, peace and justice and freedom of worship. Remember, and that had God not given that permission, then synagogues and churches and mosques and places where God is commemorated would have been torn down. And again, you know, Professor Mahmoud Ayoub, one of, you know, my really beloved teachers. I never had the privilege of taking classes with him, but in knowing him over the years, you probably did at Hartford. You had a chance to study with him.
No, he came to Hartford after I had left, but I spent quite a bit of time with him. We did at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley.
Lovely.
When he came as a visiting scholar.
Yeah, and he, you know, he was the one who, as I was struggling with these verses many years ago, he was the one who told me that, you know, Timothy, it's a blessing that fighting is included in the Qur'an, because what the Qur'an is trying to do is not promote war, but to restrain it, right? To bring it under law, to bring it under legal restraint. And so that's why in so many of these contexts, if we keep reading, often the very next verse is going to mention, but if they stop fighting you, you stop fighting them. Or if they incline toward peace, you should incline toward peace. And that God doesn't love transgressors or extreme, you know, people who are outside of those restraints. And so even here, there's a mentioning in this verse, a mentioning of the possibility of generosity or ransoming, meaning that you take captives. You can either you'll have a choice as to whether you just let them go free, or whether you're going to ransom them back to the families. But there's no talk of torture. There's no talk of killing people once they've become your prisoners of war, or abusing them in any way. And so
This is kind of like, so I grew, when I was in high school when 9/11 happened. And
No.
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Here.
here
Yeah.
in the southwest side, I went to Whitney Young, and we were located, downtown. And I don't know if you all recall, but Chicago was, the fear was that Chicago was next after New York and DC. And so when that happened, the school was evacuated and we were all sent home. But then in the coming days, there were a lot of questions. So we set up the MSA, we had a very small MSA, and we set up.
MSA is a Muslim Student Association, just for those who may not know.
And so we set up these tables where, just like ask us a question about Islam. We had very good questions, mostly. We didn't experience any sort of, I didn't at least, and I didn't hear of anything inappropriate. But one of the things that we talked about when it came to the warfare or the violence that is spoken about in the Qur'an was that the Qur'an gives rules, and Islam provides the rules, and this is why Islam was given to that society that didn't have those rules at the time.
Yeah.
And so to take a pause and understand, wait, why was this revealed, or why was this sent down? And it was sent down for those to establish those rules, because Islam promotes fairness, and there are rights. People have rights. Your neighbor has rights. Your spouse, they have rights. Your children have rights. And Islam is a religion that promotes and establishes and safeguards those rights of different individuals.
Yeah.
So we talked about it through those lens, I guess, and it helped to change the conversation from one of like, why is this mentioned, and why are we talking, to wait, let's understand what the society looked like and what the society needed, and what religion brings to a society.
Yeah, and this kind of, I think, contextual reading is key, is if you can put it within the context of the society in which this was being pronounced, where there were no rules of law.
Yeah, there were no rules at all.
Where the bloodshed would last for generations, with vengeance back and forth, and honor killings back and forth, and tribal warfare back and forth. That a lot of that is being regulated, and so when it's mentioned to us, and we read it completely out of context, like that's the only verse, it becomes very problematic. And we would never certainly do that with the Bible, right?
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
if you start reading the Bible and you pick a
there's
verse
on a good day, the animals and the women were allowed to live, and on a bad day, everything was commanded to be killed. Even the livestock.
Yeah, you could find passages like that. And so that's important to kind of read this in context, but this is also present, and we're reading the whole text through and through. I love how it gets to, I'm just going to jump a couple of verses.
Okay.
O you who believe.
Where are you?
This is verse number 7.
Oh, 7.
In tansurullaha yansurkum.
Yeah. If you help God,
If you help God, He will help you.
God will help you.
And so there's this reciprocity, right? If you call upon God, He will respond.
Yeah.
But God has also called upon you to obey Him,
Right.
and you must respond. So
Yeah, there's a beautiful ending which we often use in our sermons, right? Is to be mindful of God, or mention God, that God might mention you, right? And
ادعوني أستجب لكم.
So there's this idea that there's a reciprocity,
right.
that when we remember God, God is remembering us. When we mention God, God is mentioning us.
Right.
When we ask God, God is calling. But there's always that reciprocity.
Right.
And here, help God, and God will help you.
So my question here is, God doesn't need our help. So what does it mean to say,
that's
if we
great.
help God, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Would it be,
This is a classic teacher's trick.
What do you think?
What do you think?
Well, I would say to help the cause of God, or help what is good and right, and help the oppressed, and do justice in the world.
Yeah, exactly. I think that that's well said.
But
Feed
it's
the poor.
interesting that it's put in that way, that help
Help
God,
God.
not help, you know,
Yeah.
God's
the
people.
Muslim, or,
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like if you're called upon working at AIC, you do your best. You work and you service for God. I think that's how I take
Yeah.
it. For myself personally,
Well-
if I had the opportunity and I was called to work here somehow, and I came to this place and I have to
Yeah, and
work.
that's the concept of vocation,
Right.
where it's not just a job, but it's a calling, where you're fulfilling a higher purpose. And so,
And so the work then becomes an expression of your your cosmic commitments,
Right.
your commitments to God and to humanity and to the creation at large.
right,
And that's
yeah,
that's the best kind of work, but it's also the hardest kind of work because it means that it's not a 9 to 5.
it's all right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But that's a great question, Stephanie. I think that's really
Also, I think this discussion, what it illuminates is, how difficult it is for Muslims, maybe I'll speak for myself, to separate different spheres of life. Just building on what you said, the 9 to 5, like this happens, on the clock, and this happens off the clock. Or this is my private and this is my public. I mean, there's a public and private sphere, don't get me wrong, and there's huge, respect to the right to privacy and not to spy and pry on people. That's not what I'm saying. But in terms of your orientation in the world, it's all under the gaze of God. And so, like Sherman Jackson is Islamic secular.
the Islamic secular.
The Islamic secular is different from
And the secular.
the secular that's been
Yeah.
concept that's been developed, as we normally understand it, as a separation of spirits. There's a separation, but none of it is outside the gaze of God, and so all of it is religious.
Yeah. In fact, really the perfection of religion is in ihsan, right? This idea of being continually in a state of God consciousness, right? Worshiping God as if you see God, and of course you can't see God, and so you know that God is seeing you, and so what that does is that just really completely breaks down those barriers between parts of our life where God is and parts of our life where God is not. We're always in the theater of the sacred. Always. Every conversation, every interaction, we're constantly in the theater of the sacred. And when our work is connected to that, then, right, the 9 to 5, the work-life balance, we still have to sleep and we have to eat and we have to stay healthy, but it's not the work-life balance of contemporary the contemporary marketplace. Alhamdulillah. Okay.
I'm going to advance to verse 20.
Okay. If we just
I know there's a lot in there,
yeah,
but
yeah. Okay.
but this one.
Oh.
You want to pull us back?
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
So,
Actually, I wanted to pull us back to the previous surah, but it's okay. I'm not going to because
No, I'm
there's
not
something
gonna let you
there.
do that.
Okay. All right.
Listen to this. So, those who believe ask why no surah about fighting has been sent down. So this is the surah in which permission is being given to fight, right? I mean, we saw the words in Surah Al-Hajj, but
But it was just
Yeah,
just a passage.
it's around the same
yeah,
time.
Yeah.
But when a surah, they said, yet when a decisive surah that mentions fighting is sent down, you can see the sick at heart looking at you, Prophet, and visibly fainting at the prospect of death.
Yeah.
Like, before they were kind of hesitating, right? Like, okay, they were not hesitating, it seems like, why can't we fight? Because they were told to.
Yeah. To be patient.
To be patient.
That's right.
And
And to respond with something better, like when
Right.
people were attacking them, to respond in a lofty way.
now it's clear you're going to put your lives on the line,
Yeah.
right? And you can see the sick at heart. It says, الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ.
Yeah. A disease.
Yeah. يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَيْكَ. He's looking at you.
Yeah.
نَظَرَ الْمَغْشِيِّ عَلَيْهِ مِنَ الْمَوْتِ. As if, being overcome at this
Yeah.
idea that this is it.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate call.
Yeah.
فَأَوْلَى لَهُمْ. Better for them, or more fitting for them.
Yeah. So we can expect, and we have to remember too that like really war is being waged upon them. So it's not like they're out, let's go, you know, so it
Right.
wasn't like a tribal raid. This was kind of, war was being made upon them, and so obviously this chapter is going to deal with the whole range of human responses to that. From hypocrites, people say, yeah, we're with you, and then they kind of find something to do
Right.
when the
Exactly.
day of battle happens,
Or just that we're all human and we have these emotions,
Yeah.
and it's all just relative to like the fact that, you know,
Yep.
we're weak.
and scary. It's
and
scary.
Yeah.
Scary.
Yeah. And so the Quran is going to be responding to that whole range of kind of excuses and hypocrisy and even apostasy, right? It's like this, that when the going gets tough, that, you know, that the steadfast followers are going to end up being kind of the remaining few, you know.
When I see verses like this, it makes me nervous because it always reminds me of the fact that when you're in that moment,
Mm.
how would you respond?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like if you're in an emergency, you know, are you going to be the person that steps up and does CPR, or are you just going to be frozen,
Yeah.
or such things? And these kind of verses scare me because what if I were that person who was like, I don't want to die,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not
Yeah.
ready, or you know, of course you want to be not that, you want to be not of the hypocrites, but it just it has layers in it. I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
But that kind of doubt is a good sign.
I hope so.
And I'm reminded of when the list of hypocrites was revealed to the Prophet, and he entrusted it to a companion. And so I believe it was Umar radiallahu anhu, who's like, tell me, I want to see the list. He's like, no, I can't show it to you, I'm not supposed to. He's like, all right, just tell me, am I on it? I just want to make sure I'm not on it. This is like the second caliph.
Yeah.
But someone who's a believer is always questioning. You know, is never, you know, always
Never
worried
content with
that they're falling
yeah,
short,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so that can be a good sign.
Yeah, and this was, and it's comforting to know, right, that one of the verses that we just read the other night that I used for the sermon today is this idea that for those people who are sincerely engaged and really trying, that and believing and, you know, struggling to live a virtuous life, that God will judge them based upon the best of their actions, and their misdeeds will be like discarded or overlooked. And but it's true that, you know, even the companions of the Prophet, none of them thought that they had salvation in the bag, right? They still had that sense of, you know, this acute awareness of their own kind of, you know, weakness of faith, and so I guess that gives us hope that when we're feeling that same doubt that Stephanie, that you expressed, that we, like, there's hope for us, right?
Yeah.
Because they doubted themselves too.
Yeah. And you know, verse 24. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبُّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. It's talking about those people who are weakening, and there's a couple of much harder verses that come. Is that good? There's a,
Oh, it's the
It's
tea
okay.
kettle.
there's the tea kettle.
It's the
I
hour.
thought a speaker was
Staying
over.
fueled.
The tea kettle.
Yes.
Ramadan Unscripted.
Yes.
No, but you know, the Quran gives such a clear, I feel, call in terms of a single-minded devotion to God.
Yeah.
Right? It's unambiguous, and that this is all fleeting, and you have to be very clear in terms of what you're going to give it all for, and so at this moment of warning, you know, of issuing that warning to those who are wavering, it says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ.
Yeah.
Do they not This is verse 24. Do they not contemplate the Qur'an,
Yeah.
think deeply about the Qur'an? Or do they have locks on their hearts? Like, how else could you miss it? And so there's an old tafsir called Tadabbur al-Qur'an.
Yeah.
That's based on this, that phrase.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
Wait, don't race.
I race.
Yeah.
I race to 35, which is really a tough verse. Again, okay, these are a series of tough verses. So once now the battle cry has been made, right? Once it's clear that you've got to take up arms. And you can extrapolate this, to any righteous cause. There's just war theory in Catholic social teaching. I'm not thinking of this in terms of, exclusively one group of people or another. Right here, it's being spoken of as the followers of the Prophet Muhammad, who, when you're with the Prophet, things are black and white. But once this moment comes, it says, so believers, do not lose heart and do not cry out for peace. Religion of peace, right? But at this point, because some might want to compromise everything, and says no, you've got to make a stand. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ, and you will have the upper hand. وَاللَّهُ مَعَكُمْ,
Yeah.
and God is with you. This is verse 35.
Right.
He will not begrudge you the reward for your good deeds. The life of this world is but play and amusement.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to go back to? If you believe and guard against evil, He will grant you recompense. And He does not ask you to give up all your possessions.
But here, I guess it could also be interpreted that do not, don't abandon the effort, right? Just because you're tired, and
Right.
don't really call for peace or invite them to peace when the question of justice is not settled.
Right.
One of the things that we saw before is that fighting in the Qur'an, the permission to fight had a purpose.
Right.
Because if we establish these people who are fighting for justice in the land, they'll establish a just society, there will be religious freedom, there will be, the laws that command what is good and forbid what is wrong. And so I think here it's not that everybody wants peace. But I think this would mean almost like, if it's uncomfortable to be fighting, ask them, beg them to just to settle.
Right.
And if the situation is not a healthy situation, then settling can't be an option, right? Or shouldn't be an option. I think that's how I read it anyway.
No, I read it like you do.
But it's not an anti-peace verse, I think.
But is this, how much is this a context-specific verse? I mean, should we be reading it as within the context of that battle, or is this a more general?
It's a good question. I read it as, don't be faint-hearted. Like, it's going to be easy to give up the fight, especially when the odds may appear to be against you. But don't do it because of that reason. Stay on the right of what is just and true, even if the odds are against you. And I could point out some theaters in the contemporary world where, it's playing out, and my own personal inclination is, let's just put the guns down.
Yeah.
And I feel like almost this verse is saying,
Well, here in the
Some-
footnote, it says, to those who are crying to root out evil and have authority to do so, the question is not of peace or conflict, but of whether good or evil is to prevail.
yeah,
So the focus is not on peace
Yeah.
versus conflict, but good versus evil. They must remember the good must ultimately prevail, and Allah's help is with those who, as far as men can, and are trying to further the universal plan. So,
Yeah,
so good versus evil, as opposed to peace
Right,
versus
right.
conflict.
And so sometimes, you know, social justice warriors seem to me like I want them to give a little so we can make a compromise. But I feel this verse is saying no. Don't give an inch. You are on the right. Which is, so I kind of struggle with that.
Yeah,
But it's there.
yeah.
What do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there are different strategies of like fights. So I don't know if it means that you can keep fighting, but how do you fight is also, I think, from the examples of Prophet. I mean, I don't think it's just, fighting with
Like
guns.
violent.
Yeah.
Violent fighting,
Yeah.
or like,
And you know, these three surahs that were these three Medina surahs that we're looking at, they kind of end with the treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, right? Which is the Quran calls it a victory, as if it was a battle, but it was a treaty.
Yes.
And some of the Prophet's own followers weren't excited about it. They didn't agree with it, that he would enter into a treaty with these people that they had been fighting. But the Quran almost sees that as being also one of the victories, one of the battles. But it was a battle that was ended with a treaty and not with swords.
And we come to it, surah number 48.
Okay.
Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. That's the first verse. That we have granted thee a manifest victory. This is how Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. So that God may forgive you for your past and future sins. Complete His grace upon you and guide you to a straight path. And that God may help you with powerful help. And this is just an incredible verse. It is He who sent down tranquility into the hearts of the believers.
Yeah.
Like at a moment of great,
Panic.
Anzala
The sakina.
sakina, as-sakina fi qulub al-mu'minin.
Yeah, it's like
لِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِم. Like they entered in this most perilous moment with full grace and tranquility.
Yeah.
Like they were
And with fortified belief.
what I would call, they were in the zone,
Yeah.
like completely calm.
Mm.
I was reading if I may,
Yeah.
they called me a lioness. It's Ahad Tamimi, who slapped a soldier in the West Bank.
Oh, right.
She was a young girl, and but we've seen, if you've seen No Other Land, the Palestinians who are being displaced. It's terrible, and there was settlement, and took their well, and there was great violence inflicted upon this community.
This village, yeah.
And one of our uncles got shot, by the well, by the settlers who were armed, and they're not allowed to be armed. So they ran towards him. He had fallen. And the bullets started flying their way. And she heard them whizzing past. And she heard the stone shatter next to her. And then she writes, all fear left me.
Wow.
She was just moving towards her uncle.
Toward her uncle.
Yeah. And so this is a kind of sakina. Maybe it descended on her.
Right.
Like when I read something like this, and probably people experience this, in moments. It's a kind of help from God for them.
Yeah.
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 It was yeah. So this happened to the companions. The scene for this surah is the Prophet saw a dream. This is after Ahzab, the Confederates. So we read the Surah 33. The whole army had been sent, and they chose to defend from that army from within the city. And they built a trench. And we didn't talk about the whole battle scenes. Many of them are mentioned as they occurred. We didn't have a chance to do that here, but the Qur'an is very rich in those descriptions. And ultimately God sent a wind and scattered them. But there was great fear and dissension even in the ranks because it was a moment of great trial. The following year, the Prophet saw a dream, and the following year, on basis of that dream, that he's performing the pilgrimage. And so they set out to perform the pilgrimage, and this Surah Al-Fath, recounts the scenes of those pilgrimage where they go, but they're not allowed to enter the city of Mecca, and then they make a treaty at Hudaybiyah.
Yeah.
And they send one of their messengers who's killed. Is that right?
I don't remember that about Hudaybiyah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they decide to go to war, and
no, that's later. So there was a breach later.
there was a breach.
But that was long after Hudaybiyah. So
Okay.
there was a non-aggression agreement at Hudaybiyah, and the Prophet said, "Okay, we won't do the pilgrimage now. We'll do the pilgrimage in the following year," and there was an agreement that there would be no aggression, and that
For 10 years.
for
10 years.
an extended period of time, and then eventually a Muslim was killed. Right there was an act of aggression, which was seen as a breach of covenant, a breach of treaty.
Right.
And then the Muslims marched on Mecca.
No. Yeah, no, that comes 2 years later. But during this Hudaybiyah, I've got the reference.
Okay.
From the study of Qur'an.
Okay. I won't argue.
But you're correct. It wasn't. No one was killed. But this verse will come later in the surah, where they took the bay'ah under the tree, the bay'ah shajara, and this verse refers to the discussion in verse 10, which we'll see, where the pledge is taken. While the Prophet and the pilgrims waited at Hudaybiyah for permission to enter Mecca and perform the pilgrimage, the Prophet sent Uthman ibn Affan,
who became later the third caliph. Yes.
to inform the Quraysh that their intentions were peaceful and that they sought only to make pilgrimage to the Kaaba. While Uthman was negotiating with the Quraysh, false rumors reached the Prophet that Uthman had been killed,
Okay, there you go.
greatly increasing the anxiety of Muslims. Thereupon he gave instructions that everyone be summoned to take a pledge with him. Everyone present, save one hypocrite, came to him as he sat beneath the acacia tree, is that how you pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
Acacia tree, and took their pledge. And most accounts say that they pledged that they would not flee, though some say that the pledge was that they would fight with the Prophet until death. It was bay'at al-maut, like we now are all in, because they went to the pilgrimage unarmed.
Right.
But they're like, we're not gonna leave this. And ultimately that was resolved.
Yeah.
But that pledge was under the tree, and that's all mentioned here in this surah.
And the Meccans fulfilled their promise. They emptied the city and eventually allowed the Muslims to come and make their pilgrimage.
The following year.
Yeah,
the following year. But they had to go back this year.
Yeah.
And because they had to go back that year, the Prophet had seen a dream that he was going to perform the pilgrimage. Some people were very upset, the companions. Like, you saw this dream that we're going to perform the pilgrimage, and yet you're going back. And he said, did I tell you we would do it this year? And then they came the following year and did it. So,
And did you mention the name of the surah means what it means?
Al-Fath, victory.
Victory.
Or the opening,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, opening, but also,
victory, yeah.
that's what victory is. So, so God helped them, and He sent down this sakina, this tranquility into the hearts of the believers, that they may add faith to their faith, so that their faith will increase. وَلِيَزْدَادُوا إِيمَانًا مَعَ إِيمَانِهِمْ. So they would add faith to their faith. And to God belong all the hosts, the forces of the heavens and the earth. See, there's the tadabbur of the Qur'an.
Yeah.
Like, if all the forces belong, and there was mentioned here, somewhere, it may still come, I can't remember exactly where, but that, if God wanted, He would resolve the battle, but He lets you be tested by one another also.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they were 10,000, I remember, like in the movie, like, you know.
The message, the message.
They were like
I was
around
thinking of the
10,000
message too.
fighter with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they can get Mecca easily, but subhanallah, there is something like Allah made it on time, you know. This is not the time, so they have to go back, and next year they can do it.
Yeah. And the, you know, with the previous battle, the battle of the Khandaq or the trench, you know, you can just imagine how stressful it was in Medina when they were surrounded not only by the Meccans, but all the tribes that the Meccans could muster to join them, to try to root out this monotheistic movement and to really crush them in Mecca. And you can just imagine, and they knew that there were people inside Medina who were helping them, who were informants for them, and were you know, like opening ways for them to get in the city. But it's kind of a miraculous, it's kind of a battle that really never happened, because eventually they just got tired, the tribes got tired of waiting, and because they couldn't get over this trench, and they just eventually went back, they went home. And so, again, it was a strategy that didn't include fighting. It was a strategy that tested the patience and solidarity of these Confederate tribes, and eventually it all just broke apart.
And of the believers.
Yeah, and of course the believers, yeah.
Now here in verse 10, we get, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُبَايِعُونَكَ إِنَّمَا يُبَايِعُونَ اللَّهِ. Those who pledge loyalty to you, O Prophet, are actually pledging loyalty to God Himself. God's hand is placed on theirs. God's hand is on their hands. Yadullahi.
Yeah.
The God's hand. فَوْقَ أَيْدِيهِمْ. What imagery.
You know, this is one of those rare moments of anthropomorphic imagery in the Qur'an,
Yes.
right? But we don't see many of these, but once in a while you see it.
You will
so,
see.
Yeah.
Can you explain, like, maybe some people don't know how the pledges work, or bay'ah, that people would actually like put their hands
Right.
on the Prophet and how that worked?
Yeah, I mean, it was a personal allegiance to the Prophet. And so it would be hand upon hand.
Yeah.
And they would, you know, put hands. And these days, you know, if it's a bay'ah with a lot of people, I've seen it done where the person who's taking the pledge will hold a cloth, and the cloth will be spread across, and the people will gather and grab the cloth, and then they will take their pledge. Inni ubayyuka ala sam'i wa ta'ati fil usri wal yusri wal manshati wal makri.
But this is almost, these days, this is almost exclusively in like spiritual, in a spiritual way.
Right.
That you would, you know, take an oath of allegiance to a spiritual teacher, but not in this political sense. I mean, it still can happen, but the typical way in which we see these oaths being carried out now are more in terms of spiritual communities. Yeah.
So like the bait, Dr. Mirza, bait taking a
Bay'ah.
Yeah.
Oath.
But in I'm thinking of the Urdu. I think it's
Bayt.
bait.
Yeah,
Is it
bayt.
bait?
Bayt, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that it's still a very
Bayt, Lena.
it's a practice.
That's what it is.
Okay, so we are not moving very far into the Quran, and I'm still hoping that we won't do this until Fajr. But I think what we might want to do is we might want to just wrap up this surah.
Okay.
Take a little bit of break, give everyone a break, invite people to come back in 5 or 10 minutes. And after we wrap up this surah, I'd like to respond to one question that came as a result of the previous nights, about the question of Qarun.
Okay.
So we'll answer that question, and then we'll take a little break, and on this final night of the blessed month of Ramadan, we'll refill our Ramadan unscripted cups and get ready for round 2, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Okay.
And this is what's in this pot is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Well
Chai.
If you only knew. So verse 18, you know, God's good pleasures on the believers when they swore fealty to you, to the Prophet, under the tree. That's the same pledge. And so it's very specific to the prophetic biography and the context. Maybe the last, a couple of verses are very important for this surah. So if I can just indicate them,
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
we end the surah. It says, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا بِالْحَقِّ. So, this is the vision that was spoken of. God has truly fulfilled His messenger's vision. Like even when they had to turn back.
Yeah.
God willing, you will most certainly enter the sacred mosque. Like, you know, this stepping stone of this treaty and retreat is a way station along that journey. You will لَتَدْخُلُنَّ الْمَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ. You will certainly enter the sacred mosque. Insha'Allah.
Yeah.
If God
Wills it,
wills.
yeah.
Aminin, you know, in security. Muhalliqina ru'usakum, shaven headed.
Yes.
I shaved it, but I didn't go there. I would love to go. Or with cropped hair. This is with the Hajj, we have
Because
that.
after the pilgrimage, there's a ceremonial, either shaving of the head for a man or trimming of the hair for a woman.
God knew what you did not know. And here's the verse again. He has sent His messenger with the guidance and deen al-haq, like the true way.
Yeah.
Right? This is the way. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّ. And this is, to proclaim it over all ways as the way, and enough is God as a witness. And then you have the fourth occurrence of Muhammad. Muhammadur Rasulullah, the name.
Yeah.
وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ, and those who are with him. أَشِدَّاءُ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاءُ بَيْنَهُم. And so this is when the mercy begins to become restricted, to the believers. And to those who have been pushing them out of their homes and persecuting them and causing them great, harm. To them now, they have to take a different posture.
Right. For a time.
For a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they are, firm, or what's the word? Harsh.
Yeah.
Ashidda.
Yeah.
Ala al-kufar.
Yeah.
But compassionate amongst themselves. And
formidable.
Then, it describes
Yeah.
their characteristics. This is how this Surah Al-Fath ends. And
before you end it, though, it says, this is their description in the Torah. And their parable in the gospel is that of a seed that sprouts its tiny branches, making it strong. Then it becomes thick, standing firm on its stem, to the delight of the planters. I just think it's interesting that now it's calling back to the believers of the Abrahamic tradition.
Yeah.
And
even
it's talking very specifically to the believers who, took their pledge, but now it's like, hey, you're all
lovely.
calling back to the...
It's really interesting. I'm sure there's a book written about this, about the Qur'an quoting the Bible,
right?
And the Qur'an quoting both the Hebrew Bible and the Gospels.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting when the Qur'an does that. When it's quoting, it's as if the Muslims needed that. It's like the Qur'an is as we already told you, or as we already told the children of Israel, or as we already told or it's a beautiful thing that and it really reinforces this theme that we've seen come up again and again in these nights, and that is the underlying unity of the prophetic message,
right.
and the Quranic confidence that there is still hudan wa nur, there's still guidance and light in these books that it even here it's quoting.
Yeah.
Right. Really interesting.
And it's really nice how you point that out, because in this moment of kind of final parting and division, it finds a way to speak in terms of some kind of a shared heritage and unity even then.
Because right before it's talking about prayer and prostration and all that. So.
And so in that spirit, so on one of the previous nights we were reading, can I just borrow that back? And so I'm actually going to pull out Qur'ans for all of us here for the next chapter. We were doing this in too rushed here before we started. But in Al-Qasas, in the 28th surah, the surah of the stories, right? Al-Qasas, we saw a reference to a very wealthy and arrogant person named Qarun, who was swallowed up by the earth, right? And was arrogant and it turns out, and I said that night that I didn't think Qarun was mentioned in the Bible. turns out that Qarun is the biblical Korah, who is a cousin of Moses. And all of this is thanks to one of our listeners and friends who gave me a mini lecture on this earlier today, and he was like, no, Qarun is totally in the Bible. And so here we are in the book of Numbers. We have the story of Korah and his greed and his arrogance. He was an enemy of Moses, and he was rallying the leaders of the children of Israel against Moses. And just like in the Qur'an, he was swallowed up by the earth. And all of the people that had all these leaders that had been with him were just incinerated in the Bible. And so it's really interesting again to see the biblical Quranic parallels and how and I it's been too long for me, and so I did not remember Korah, but it's but there it is. And so this was a great contribution of one of our listeners.
Yeah, I'd actually seen it when you mentioned it, but we had moved on.
Oh, you didn't say anything.
I didn't say anything.
Oh.
But Peter Beinart, he writes about Korah in his book, Being Jewish After Gaza.
Oh, right.
A Reckoning.
That's a book that's been on my list. I was just looking at that the other day. Yeah.
So I'm glad he brought it up.
But I guess the complaint against Korah, or the accusation against Korah, is the same in the two traditions.
Yeah.
He was an enemy of the prophet. He was arrogant. He was wealthy, and the earth just swallowed him up, and all of his household.
Oh,
in the Bible is very clear.
So the question that was posed, was it just him, or his house, meaning not his dwelling, but his house, like the house of Atreides.
Here, this is in the book of Numbers. We read that the moment he finished saying all these words, these offensive words, the ground split open under their feet. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them, their families too, and all of Korah's men and all of their belongings.
Wow.
So.
All right. Well, with that, we end our first hour. We will come back. How about at this is Central Time. So how much time should we give?
Let's take no more than 10 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay. So 10 minutes from now, which will be 11:07 Central Time.
Okay.
We will come back.
Inshallah.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. 10 minutes.
Assalamu alaikum once again. This is round 2.
Welcome back. Welcome back. And please share it with your friends, you know, online if you have a feed. Put the link on and say we're live, we're going a bit extra tonight. Bring in people and please send your questions. We have Sister Stephanie here.
I'm checking the,
Yes.
checking the chat.
Who checks the
Oh,
chat.
good, yes.
Should we go with Hujurat? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Yes.
The chambers.
Yes.
Is that what it's translated as? The chambers. The private apartments.
Okay.
So this, yeah.
Just 2 quick things, and we don't even have to look at it. But just as we
Mr. Pick up the pace.
No, as we back up, there's a beautiful passage, and again, just very brief. Just before Surah Muhammad in the Ahqaf, where we just quickly where we have a reference to the jinn gathering to hear the recitation of the Qur'an. Right. So I just want to say it's there, and so people can go back and look at it. And then also in Surah Al-Fath, we have a reference to the fact that God has a sunnah, right? The sunnatullah. So that God has a customary way of, like a pattern of behaving, but God's sunnah never changes, right? So God has a, but this is just really interesting. These are just little points of glimmer that are just really interesting in and of themselves. And so I just want to mention that as we then now go into Al-Hujurat, the chambers.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, you know, the setting is kind of a stable. Now we're not in war. It's a kind of stable setting where the prophet's authority has been by and large acknowledged, and he's living, you know, for lack of a better term, a normal kind of life, right? And the Bedouin tribes are accepting his position as messenger of God and as head of the community. And so they're being given some etiquette, and then we're being given, you know, some really, really important guidance on how to deal with each other as human beings.
That's right, because now they have quarrels among themselves.
Yeah.
And so there's some beautiful material here about making peace and reconciliation and being a single brotherhood and
Right.
like not getting into the
Right.
divisive quarrels.
But it recognizes that you're going to be in groups even of believers based on your multiple identities. The tribes are not going away.
Right, there's still
And so how to deal with conflict.
yeah.
So, O you who believe, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, and now this is addressing this community of, by and large, those people have come into the fold.
Right.
But it's people who are, in a civic sense, in the fold, but not necessarily real believers in the heart. They've kind of come into the community as citizens. And we'll see that tension come up later on in this surah. It's a short surah of maybe 15 verses or something. So, O you who believe, believers, do not push yourselves forward in the presence of God and His messenger. And this idea of, you know, God and His messenger as being together in a sense. Like their authority it's always been coupled, but it seems just to me like you don't push yourself forward, not just in the presence of the messenger, but in God and His messenger together.
Yeah.
Be mindful of God. He hears and knows all things. Believers, do not raise your voices above the prophets.
Yeah.
So now it's, you know, become clear that there's a kind of a civic etiquette, because now you're talking about the prophet.
And deference.
Yeah. Do not raise your voice when speaking to him as you do to one another. Your good deeds may be cancelled without you knowing. Oh my God.
So this kind of brings us back to something larger in the Islamic tradition, is the importance of manners. You know, there's so much importance given to, you know, proper comportment and manners when it comes to our different social situations and the different ways that we relate.
Right. But also, I mean, the leaders, they have so much more pressure than ordinary people. Like, leadership is not easy. And we try and treat our leaders like they should be like us. But there is a differentiation. I feel like this might be what it's saying. And so
Of course, but the prophet is a totally different category of leader, though.
Yeah,
Right.
but in this, I think in this case, he also has to be exemplary,
Yeah.
not always exceptional, because otherwise, how would he be a model?
Right. Right.
So maybe I feel there's something there where it's like, listen, these are human beings. He's a human being, and he needs his time.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got his chambers, his private apartment.
Right. Right.
Don't always be knocking on his door, right? As I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking like, we shouldn't send you as many emails. I mean, it's not this is not what it's saying, but we need to give you a break. But that's just a little echo of I think the kind of advice this is giving is those who lower their voices in the presence of God's messenger, whose hearts God has proved to be aware. They will have forgiveness and a great reward. Those who shout out to thee from without the inner apartments, from outside. Like the Bedouins would show up and they'd say, Muhammad!
Yeah.
Like, come and answer our questions, right?
And we have to remember too that it wasn't like those were thick-walled houses.
No.
Right. There was no glass in the
Yeah.
windows, and so it was pretty easy to do that.
Yeah,
Right.
they lack understanding.
Yeah.
Right? And I think these days, like some people, they have so much demand on their time, right? And then you reach out to them and you think you want an answer in an hour or 2 hours, right? I don't know if I'm reading too much into
There's an element of that too. I mean, today, but I mean, it's hard for us to compare any leader of an organization or of a country even to the prophet in this case. But still, but you're right that we, especially like I think in a tribal society, it was a bit more democratic, right? In Arabia, right? So even a tribal, sheikh, a chief, right, would still be like he's the first among equals in a way, and so there was probably more. It was freer within a tribal society to call out a leader or to, but and also in the contemporary democratic world, or at least the world that aspires to be democratic or thinks of itself as being democratic, we have this sense that we can just speak to people in positions of authority as if they're as if they're our equals,
and they should be responsive, of course.
Yeah.
But
does this also kind of getting this like feeling of just it's just this beautiful just like Allah just wanting to protect and take care of his
the messenger.
Yeah. Peace be upon him.
Nice.
That's
and
nice.
it's just like 1 second, folks, like this is how you should be speaking to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And it's not coming from the Prophet, peace be upon him. He's not saying, talk to me like this. Because he was the one that was always available and always willing to give and do what he could for the people. Sometimes at the expense of his own comfort, many times at the expense of his own comfort, his own time and resources. But it's like no, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting him in this way. It just feels so loving.
That reminds
Wow,
me of
that's a
Surah
great-
Al-Rahman when he's talking about, and I'm gonna forget the specific verse, but where he's saying, advising his son, worship God. And then God is saying, and honor your parents,
Like
But
he doesn't say it.
Luqman doesn't say it, because that wouldn't be becoming
Because he is a parent.
because he is
Right,
a parent,
exactly.
right? And so, like you said, like this is a way that the Qur'an and God is saying this, because the Prophet's not going to say, hey guys, I need a break, or could you wait till the morning if this is not urgent? It's a protection,
But that's a beautiful way to read it. I love that.
And I think, Naza, you almost anticipate the next verse 5. You want to see it? Verse number 5 of Hujurat.
If instead of shouting to you to come out to them, they had been patient until you came out to them, it would certainly have been better for them, in respect of the manners due to you from them.
There you go.
However, God is all forgiving. Oh, I didn't, yeah, that's the next.
Yeah. And so this is, kind of, it seems like personal etiquette with the leader, and we're now moving into, I feel more of a statecraft, foreign policy type verses. So you believe, if a fasiq, like a known, a dishonest person, the translates a wicked or a troublemaker, brings you news, check it out first, verify it. It's like fake news.
Fake news.
Or like false intelligence, right?
Yeah.
Lest you wrong others unwittingly.
Yeah.
You start to wage war on the basis of false information.
Which you just referred to at Hudaybiyah with the rumor about Uthman.
Wow,
Yeah.
I never made that
I mean,
connection.
I was thinking of like misinformation campaigns, even going back that far, but
And then later regret what you have done.
Yeah. So really, what we're getting is like political counsel here.
Political counsel.
Yeah.
if you read the earlier verse about don't raise your voice over the prophet or in his presence, can that also, I mean, we know that also has a figurative meaning, like you don't put your opinion over what is the sunnah or,
That's like, you're like total fiqh person.
no.
Because that's exactly, I mean, he's not in front of us right now. So what does it mean for us? It's exactly that. That's what the scholars say. That, that means we've got his words, and we've got the scripture, the revelation. Don't put your own, don't try and be more assertive than, like, be
don't-
deferential.
Yeah, and don't be more prophetic than the prophet.
Be
Yeah.
deferential
That's right.
to the scripture. So
Yeah.
that's nice. I'm glad you pointed that out. So, there's a couple of intervening verses, but maybe we go to 9, again to the foreign policy. وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. It's one of my favorite verses.
Yalla bil-Inglizi.
If two
Yes.
groups of believers, can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah.
No.
No more quick stories in Ramadan Unscripted. Okay.
This one is definitely worth it, but I'm going to pass. If we get time, if two groups of believers fight, you believers should try to reconcile them.
Yeah.
And see, if you look at international affairs right now, when two people fight, what do the great powers do?
Oh, we sell arms to
They
them.
are
Yeah, we're selling
One-
arms. Yeah.
Wow.
You see,
Yeah.
the system should be set up to make peace between.
Yeah.
Like, no, stop fighting. But we were like, we armed them. And I think Switzerland is the country that they don't allow arms to be sold in an active war zone. There should be like international law. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But that's the guidance we have here. And then, but still, فَإِن بَغَتْ إِحْدَاهُمَا عَلَى الْأُخْرَى. If one of them transgresses, even you try to make peace, but one doesn't come to the table and wants to keep fighting, then all of you should come together and make sure that they cease to fight, that they comply.
Wow. So
And
it's like a responsibility.
It's a responsibility. It's a collective responsibility. And
then make peace between with justice.
just and even-handed reconcile them.
Yeah. But be fair.
But so it's not just a فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا بِالْعَدْلِ وَأَقْسِطُوا, with justice and be fair, and even-handed.
So it's not like contemporary mediation where you have to kind of accept the injustice of the situation in order to make peace. This is more of a justice-based kind of mediation.
Just justice-based reconciliation.
Yeah.
And so, if you just keep them from fighting, but they're not reconciled, when they get a chance, they'll come to blows again.
Yeah.
You have to reconcile their hearts. It's not just it's called a negative peace.
Okay, I'm gonna give us just one more verse on this topic, verse 10.
Yeah.
And then we'll transition, inshallah. So yeah, does somebody want to read that? What does Muhammad Asad say? I know that you have Muhammad Asad's translation, Stephanie.
Okay, I'm not sure if the verse number is at the beginning or the end. All believers are brethren.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's the one.
Hence, whenever they are at odds, make peace between your two brethren, and remain conscious of God, so that you might be graced with His mercy.
That's nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ.
Yeah. So and I think this reference to brothers is not gender specific. I think this is more of a collective, right? That the believers are like family, brothers and sisters.
Yeah, and the next verse says, like, men shouldn't deride other men, and women shouldn't deride other women.
Right.
So it speaks right to that point.
Can we read that verse?
Ah.
No, Hujurat is.
I know. And let no one think that I don't want to give the Quran its due.
No.
And there's still verses here that I can't leave the surah without reading.
This one is too important.
Okay, yalla.
This one, but Hujurat, just allow me just Hujurat
Okay.
and some of the musabbihat.
Okay, is this a
And
story
also-
or?
No. I'm
Okay.
on the text.
Okay.
Listen to this. I mean, this is so important. Let believers, no one group of men should jeer at another,
Yeah.
and who may, after all, be better than them.
Yeah.
And if you look at our current climate, I mean, we talk about Arabs, or the Desis, or the Chinese, or the Russians. We talk about them as groups, like nations, in a jeering way, right? The Jews. This is what I feel it's saying. Don't do that,
Yeah.
right? And then it singles out, and no group of women should jeer at another who may, after all, be better than them. This kind of cliquish
Yeah.
behavior. It leads to great problems. Do not speak ill of one another. Do not use offensive nicknames for one another, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How bad it is to be called a mischief maker after accepting faith. And if you look at our politics, it's all about naming and
Oh,
jeering.
yeah. Always.
It's
And belittling. And when it gets violent, dehumanizing.
And our
Yeah.
our religion says no.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem. So I just think this was so important.
Yeah. And I don't disagree.
I know.
This is beautiful.
And then, O you who believe, avoid suspicion. اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن. We're always speculating about intentions, about motives, and don't spy on one another.
Wow.
Yeah. It even says that in some cases suspicion is a sin.
It's a sin,
Yeah.
right? And don't make assumptions. And then it's the climax of the surah, that O you who believe,
Yeah.
O humankind. See, it started with Alladhina Amanu, now it's
Yeah.
O humankind.
Ya ayyuhan nas.
We created you from a single pair, a male and a female, and made you into nations and tribes, that you may know one another.
Come to know one another.
Come to know one another. Not that you would despise each other. That's in brackets.
Yes, that's in brackets.
Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of God is the one who's most righteous. This has gone to beyond believers.
Yeah.
It's all humankind.
All humankind.
I mean, this is a huge lesson for us.
Yeah.
And God has full knowledge and all things. The Bedouin Arabs say we have come to believe. This is where it's, when I pointed out that it's a civic citizenship, not necessarily a faith one. You have no faith. Tell them they have no faith. Only you have submitted, you accepted the Prophet's authority in a way. Because faith has not yet entered your hearts. But that's okay. If you continue to obey God and His messenger, He will not belittle aught of your deeds.
Yeah.
He will not diminish any of your deeds.
Right.
He's most forgiving and merciful. And then the believers are those who believe. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, who really believe and have no doubt, and then strive with their wealth and their lives in His way. Those are those who are truthful. And then, what? Tell them, what?
Yeah.
Do you instruct God about your religion? Do you think you know better? But God knows all that is in the heavens and the earth. He has full knowledge of all things. يَمُنُّونَ عَلَيْكَ أَنْ أَسْلَمُوا. They think they've done you a favor by submitting. No. this is no favor to me.
Yeah.
It is God who has done you a favor. You see, it's just,
Yeah.
we always flip the script, and God knows all this. So thank you for allowing me to kind of just
No,
quickly
it's-
read
Thank
through
you.
that. It's just an incredible
No,
Hujurat.
you know, and
But now I yield.
But no, but this is the challenge.
I
This
know,
is
I know.
the challenge of our nights, is because the Quran is so rich that that there's just really it's almost an impossible task to power through it in a thoughtful way in just 29 nights. You know,
Yeah.
it's just really, even if we had an extra night, we wouldn't finish because it's just so
Yeah.
so rich. I just want to go back to ayah 13. just
That
for a
was
second.
very smooth. That was
No.
very smooth.
No, I want to go back to ayah 13 just because it's so important.
Okay.
And so, you know, meaning that the diversity of the human family and the diversity of the creation even is clearly part of the plan, right? And so O humankind, we've created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes in order that you might come to know one another. And so this is really interesting. It's almost as if the entire creation is a kind of video game, and there are secrets that have been given to each group and each nation and tribe, and that our job is to come to know them, right? Because clearly there's something for us to come to know by coming to know them. And so the divine imperative here is not for us to be fighting. So and again, this runs counter to people who want to turn Islam into a kind of a warmongering religion. So the goal is not to be in a state of constant fighting. The goal is to come to know one another. And this is really the way that, as you know, the way the Arabic is constructed here. There's a sense of total equality here between the nations and the tribes, and these differences between the human family.
Yeah.
And lita'arafu, right? So in order that you might really come to understand each other, come to know one another. And so this is a really interesting command. And I've known people of other religions who remain people of other religions, but who say, I wish we had a verse like this, you know, in our scripture, because this verse is just so incredible, and it's promoting a kind of healthy curiosity about other faiths, about other traditions, about other cultures, about other tribes, a healthy curiosity even between the genders, healthy curiosity because you know, a woman's read and a man's read, and I don't want to, you know, completely essentialize what being male or being female means. I mean, we've talked about the spectrum on previous nights, but you know, the difference of perspective doesn't mean someone's right and someone's wrong. It just means that there's an enrichment that comes when we come to know one another, when we listen to one another. And like this, what you just said previously about, you know, the prophet loves, God loves the prophet so much that here's God trying to like protect the brother, you know, and say, you know, just like, you know, lay off, guys, you know, and just give the guy some peace. And so, and that's like that didn't even occur to me when I was reading it. That's like almost like a mom's perspective. It was like, come on, guys, just give the guy some.
Yeah.
This verse echoes that other one that I think you read previously about if God wanted to, he would have made everyone unified.
A single ummah.
A single ummah.
Yeah.
But this is on purpose.
Yeah.
There's a purpose for
And
it.
there's something for us to know, which means that we shouldn't waste time being all supremacist and being all kind of ethno-nationalist, that we should really have that sense of humility, like, wow, there's something for me to learn here. And it's something, and that natural, healthy curiosity about each other. Yeah.
Was that ever the case, like historically? Or when was there like a big shift towards, you know, with that unity? Did it exist?
No, there was always us versus them. Is, it seems like it's a universal, and it seems as though, to me, that the Qur'an is trying to move us, move us beyond that. That there's still going to be distinctions, like there are even distinctions between believers in طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. if there are two groups of believers who come to blows. So that those distinctions will be there. But there is something greater that unifies us as not just as believers, and you can see how it progresses, like two groups of believers who come to blows. The believers are brethren. O humankind.
Yeah, it's just
get to know each other. Like it's moving us to this. And then the best is the most righteous.
Yeah.
And so the best may not be from our community. And
أتقاكم, the most.
Allah created like the شعوب والقبائل. جعلناكم قبائل وشعوبا لتعارفوا.
That's this, yeah.
Yeah. So
the peoples
diversity,
and the qaba'il, the tribes.
yeah.
And the masculine and the feminine. Like all this is part of the plan. And this difference of perspectives, you know. And it's I mean, anybody who's been in a committed relationship long enough, I mean, the difference of perspectives is a real thing. Like it's a really and learning to see it through the other's eyes. Sometimes
understand each other.
Sometimes it never happens.
yeah, complete your thought.
Yeah, like the diversity, Allah make us, like different, the tribes and communities, so we can be engaged together and understand each other.
Yes.
Not just like separate us and we be separated. No, we have to be close and understand each other.
Yeah. So the whole idea of encounter.
And this is coming after those verses about don't jeer another group because they might be better than
Right.
you.
Yeah.
It's like because we don't know one another, that's why
Well, that's
we
yeah.
make fun of people.
Yeah.
That's
It's almost like we're putting together MLK's quote, people fear each other because they hate each other because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they don't talk to
If
each
you
other.
don't know something, you will hate it.
Right.
This is how it is.
And they don't talk to each other because they're separated.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I got it right, but it's something like that.
Even in old Arabic, right?
Yeah.
If something is known, ma'ruf, it means it's good,
Yeah.
right? And if something is not known, it means it's bad. You know, in the classical Arabic, and so there's a way in which I think absolutely. I think again this is one of the interesting things is that we've had this conversation before about whether the Qur'an is kind of describing a situation or whether it's actually then saying that it should be this way for all time. And I see in the Prophet's lifetime a real push to move society, and we see it in the Qur'an as well, a push to move society away from this ethnic kind of, this ghettoized ethnic idea of our identity is better than theirs. And so, for example, when Salman the Persian, right, traveled all that way to come and join him, and the Prophet, upon him be peace, said that Salman minna al bayt, that he's, Salman is one of us, the family of the Prophet, like part of my family. And so this is the beginning of breaking down that idea of Arab and non-Arab, and so the goal was always, I think, to have that beautiful mosaic, in that spirit of brotherhood and sisterhood. But human beings are tough.
Bismillah, Bismillahir-Rahmanir Rahim. Qaf.
Okay, we're moving.
Qaf. So this is the next group of Meccan surahs. Beginning with Qaf, one letter, but in this case it's not even a full verse.
Yeah.
It's one letter, but it's part of a verse. Wal Qur'an al-Majid. This surah, the Prophet once he recited as his Jummah khutbah. And I know Sheikh Hamza just did a session on Surah Qaf.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this Ramadan. So I think we can direct them to it.
Okay, great.
So we'll move on. But the last ayah of the surah, it begins Qaf wal Qur'an al-Majid.
Yeah.
And it ends فَذَكِّرْ بِالْقُرْآنِ. Is that how it ends? Yeah. فَذَكِّرْ بِالْقُرْآنِ مَنْ يَخَافُ وَعِيدٍ. So remind them with this Qur'an.
Yeah.
Because this Qur'an is al-dhikr. And
whosoever fears this warning, let him be admonished by the Qur'an.
And then If we're good to flow, الذاريات.
Okay.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Wow.
I love the rhythm. والذاريات ذروا.
Yeah, they're
فالحاملات وقرا. فالجاريات يسرا. فالمقسمات أمرا. إنما توعدون لصادق. Verily that which you are promised is true. وَإِنَّ الدِّينَ لَوَاقِعٌ. And the judgment will come. There the word ad-din is like Maliki Yawm
Yeah,
ad-din,
yeah.
for judgment. And the oaths, are being taken on, the translation I have is, it's the winds that are scattering wide, and those that lift and bear heavy weights, referring, I believe, to the seas, the swells of the ocean. And those that flow with ease and gentleness, and distribute the rain as ordained. What you are promised is true.
And all of this is an oath. It's a Quranic oath. This is another one of those Quranic oaths where God is swearing by something in the creation.
Yeah. Verse 7 got me. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْحُبُكِ. By the sky with its pathways.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Wow.
What do you think?
Well, in this day and age, it makes you think of intergalactic travel.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Warp speed. At that time in their cosmology, I think they understood this more as either it could be the clouds, like if you're looking at, the Earth's kind of atmosphere, but if you're looking at the heavens,
In the movement of the stars and the planets.
yeah, the planets are moving in their own paths.
Okay, I also love this reference in 20 and 21, again about the signs of God. And we've talked about this several times with Surah Yusuf and other surahs, this idea that part of understanding this world is learning how to read the signs, because the signs are all around us and nothing is what it appears to be. But here again, we have that on earth are signs for those of assured faith, and also in your own souls, right? And will you not then see? So again, and we read before that the signs are on the horizon,
Right.
and in our own souls.
Yeah.
But again, the Quran is reminding us that the signs of God are everywhere,
Right.
and they're in the world and in our own souls.
No, that's lovely. I marked that. But in this 4 sequence, so if you start from 19,
Okay.
وَفِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. So this is the social sphere,
Right.
that there's a rightful share of wealth to the one who, the sa'il, the beggar,
asker,
or the one who asks, and the deprived. So that's the social world. Then it comes to the world of the terra, earth. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ. And on this earth are all these natural signs. Then وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. You go deep. And then وَفِي السَّمَاءِ. And then, so it's like it moves through these different realms.
Yeah.
It's just like lovely. وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. In the sky is your sustenance. And all that you are promised. Maybe because, it all comes from the sunlight and then the rain,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. There's a whole thing on Ibrahim. But let's go
And Musa.
49, verse 49. If we do the jewels.
Speaking of the winds,
Yeah, the winds.
Oh.
It's a windy night here in Chicago.
Oh my gosh, it's blowing hard.
Yeah.
وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْن.
Yeah.
What do you think of this? Sister Özlen, I'm not hearing from you.
You're on 49, right?
Yeah.
From everything that we have created, there are pairs. Really, it's two or a pair.
That ye may receive instruction. What does it have to do with being in pairs? So that we may receive instruction, or that people might take note.
our translation says, we've created opposites.
Oh, that's
So
what I was
that might
thinking.
be
Are they
in
talking
mind.
about
Yeah.
like light and darkness and sunrise and
Like
sunset. To
contrariness.
be able to understand
Yeah,
one, you
contrary.
have to
Yeah.
have the
So
other.
that you might bear in mind that God alone is one. Oh,
So
because
that
there's
Yin
layers of
yang.
everything, but
They
God
come
is
together.
one.
Yes.
Interesting.
But you see, even when you teach, right, in classroom to learn, you always put counter arguments. And so even that might be interesting. But so that you might bear that God is one. I love that, because look at the next verse. فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ. And so run to God. Everything is in pairs, contraries. So run to God, because He is one. There's no two places to run to. Isn't it great?
Yeah, it reminds me also of these other passages that talk about how God and the prophets, extract people from the darknesses, plural, and bring them into the light, which is always singular in the Qur'an. There's a sense of being pulled out of the fray
Nice.
of multiplicity and into a place of unity.
Yeah. And then this in Zariyat is that key verse, that you have only created jinns and men. Basically, al-jinn wal-ins,
Yeah.
jinns and humankind, to worship me, to serve me. This is 56.
It's 56.
And no sustenance do I require of them,
Yeah.
nor that do I require that they should feed me. Inna Allaha huwa razaq, for it is God who gives all sustenance, Lord of power and steadfast or ever mighty, dhul quwwatil mateen.
And yet, this is it. So the whole purpose of our existence is to serve God, and then right away God says, "But I don't need your service," right?
Well, he said, I don't need you to feed me.
Right. But there's a sense that God is totally like.
Yeah.
And we've read earlier too that you need me, but I don't need you, right? Humanity needs God, but God does not need humanity.
Yeah.
But there's this sense that, like I'm wondering even if this can be expanded. Like, I mean, obviously, serving the creation is serving God, and serving God is serving the creation. There's no real difference between those two. But I've often thought that the human being was really made to. We were created, as the Qur'an says, we were created after the creation was made, and we were installed here to be the caretakers, like to the servants in a way of the creation. And I'm just wondering if there's a key to like human fulfillment here, that it's really in service that we find the most fulfillment, right? It's in service that we find the most happiness, right? And that we were created to serve. We were created to, to be of service. And it's really those moments when we have the privilege of really serving the creation or serving something that is purposeful and meaningful and life-giving. Like those are our highest moments of happiness.
Right.
Do you feel when you donate something, you feel so happy
Yeah.
with the donation, even like some work, some.
Are you
material?
referring to a donation to the American Islamic College?
Such as this was mug. Yes.
This was the only scripted part of the unscripted Ramadan. No, we're just kidding.
So happy, like.
Psychologists
Yeah.
actually recommend that for depression and for issues. They recommend that you give without expecting anything.
Right.
You help without expecting anything back.
Yeah.
It's kind of, and it does really make you feel good.
Yeah,
Help,
doesn't it?
right, yeah.
And there's no joy, there's nothing that we could buy that would give us that kind of pleasure.
So can I just building on this? We live, in a world where we're told you live for yourself.
Yeah.
You should be our international relations is self-interest. Our economy,
Adam Smith.
is self-interest. You fulfill your self-interest, and that will somehow produce the greater good. But it's complete anathema.
Yeah.
Like you need to be living not for self-interest. And by the way, if you look at even old philosophers like Aristotle, I mean, the virtue is, you begin to go to the non-virtuous political arrangements when it goes from monarch who is not self-interest, that's the virtuous, to the tyrant who's the autocrat, who's the self-interested, or the aristocracy, that's the few who are not self-interested, that's still virtuous, but you move to an oligarchy where there's that small group that's working in self-interest, or as opposed to the polity, where it's the multitudes but they're still working not in self-interest, that's still virtuous. But then when it's everyone working for their own interests, it becomes a democracy, which is not virtuous. But they say it's, no, but and the philosophers recognize that. But what they said, it's the least worst,
Right.
because you can never achieve the virtuous. And this is why we have democracy, because you don't want any of the other bad ones because they're much worse. So you settle for the least worst. But what we're being told here is that's just the wrong way to live.
Right.
But this is an ideal that we're called towards, but maybe in reality we're just not able to achieve it.
But I think ultimately, as we think about our own happiness, I think if we live long enough, I think that we come to learn it experientially, right? That my happiest moments in life were the moments when I felt like I was really in the service of another human being, right? And then and my most miserable moments are moments when I'm
All for myself.
I'm totally absorbed in my own self-interest. And so I think that there's just a fundamental truth about human nature here, that we were really we were hardwired we were created to be of service, and that's where our joy is going to be.
I have a comment, and I don't want to rain on the parade because this is all feeling very good. But the part about
Rain! Let it rain!
the part about no sustenance do I ever demand of them, nor do I demand that they feed me, calls to mind to me that there are religions where there's an idol and people put food.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking if I were someone reading that from a different tradition, I might think, wow, it's speaking directly to XYZ religion. I don't know. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah, although I think, you're the world religions guy. I mean, I've done some, but it's not necessarily to fulfill a need, right? But to almost, it's another kind of service.
And a way of honoring or
And a way of
reverencing.
honoring.
Yeah. Because, I mean, obviously the food on the altar never gets eaten
Right.
in those religious traditions, but it's a way of kind of honoring and reverencing. But it is also true that the Qur'an is coming out of or it's still in a world here, and again, it's not, we're dancing around history here, but in a world where people thought that they would be burning carcasses to please God. And the Qur'an is very clear that it's not the smoke of flesh that pleases God, right? And so this is just kind of reinforcing this Quranic teaching that God is not a big person who's hungry up there or angry and hungry up there, but that God is beyond all thought and imagining, and as we read the other day, Laysa kamithlihi shay, that there's nothing like unto God, and that God has no need of anything that we do. All of this is given for our benefit, which is kind of incredible, really, when you think about the prayer, fasting, this is all for us, for our benefit.
Something you said earlier about God has a sunnah. God has
A way of acting,
being, a predictable, maybe you could say. To me, that kind of flies in the face of people who say, God is just so erratic. It's he's just a vengeful God, or have that impression of God. But I think the Quranic view of God or presentation of God is that there's a logic, there's a sunnah, there's a way of God, and that's, I mean, based in mercy.
Yeah, and part of God's sunnah, it's very clear in all the verses that we've been reading, is that God will not do an injustice to anyone, right? That no soul will be treated unjustly. And that's like a promise that keeps coming up again and again and again. And that we can say that's the sunnah of God too.
I just wanted, since Stephanie opened up the reins on the parade, I just wanted to just say,
the floodgates are open.
the floodgates. You know, we talk about these are the ideals, or we've kind of said that a few times now. So, and then you hear those debates or those talks or the conversations surrounding, you know, just about is the Qur'an, can we apply it in modern society, in the society, you know? And so I don't know, I don't know what my question is, but it's more of a thought, just, you know, we say this is our guidance, and can it be applied, you know, in modern society? We're talking about all of these, you know, these ideals, and so how?
Well, Özlem just said that, like, even as a treatment for depression, right?
Yeah.
People are told, right, to go, like, you know, be part of a soup kitchen, or do something for refugees, or like do something for the benefit of others. And so I think that, like, there's a very contemporary reference to a huge problem that faces us in this country and all around the world, that, you know, depression and loneliness. And
but I think Nasa, what Nasa might be asking is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, individuals can apply it to varying degrees in their domains, but can we have a world that, you know, maybe there's a system of life that where we're all schooled and instructed, where the politics and economics is structured in a way where we're incentivized so that the self-interested people don't necessarily rise to the top. Like, they're there, but they're not necessarily centered, and that's not the message that we're getting all the time. And that's not what's expected to get ahead in life or to flourish. You know, this is a totally different worldview. And so that's and I think to engage that question, if I understood it correctly, it goes back to, remember God says, we gave the trust to the mountains and they refused, but man was foolish and he took it on. And so we're put in a situation where the world will always challenge us to try to change it. But we will probably not be able to do it. But we cannot but try. And that is the call, to give yourself to that. And so don't be frustrated, because, you know, if you think of it like a test, every trial you get, like every roadblock you get next level unlocked. If you're thinking of it like a game, like I've reached the next level, bring it, right? And then you encounter the next trial and you're like, alhamdulillah, I'm next level, right? Until you die.
Wow.
you know, the trials never stop. And you know, what was I going to say? You know, but I think we can't help but try.
We can't help but try.
And I think we're meant to strive.
And we're people of hope.
والطور, by the mount, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وكتاب مسطور في رق منشور والبيت المعمور والسقف المرفوع. This lovely rhythmic والبحر المسجور إن عذاب ربك لواقع. Again, you know, the rhythm breaks, that all these oaths are taken, and then verily the doom of thy Lord will indeed come to pass. مَا لَهُ مِنْ دَافِعٍ, none can avert it. There is none that can avert it. And this is Surah At-Tur. Woe unto those who are, you know, deny the truth. Shall we move to An-Najm?
Well, let's just clarify what At-Tur is.
Oh, the mountain.
But what mountain?
Mount Sinai.
Mount Sinai.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is even swearing an oath. What happened on Mount Sinai, right? The books of Moses were given to Musa, alayhi
Yes.
salam. And so in a way, the Quran is even now swearing an oath on the revelation of the Torah, right? And so this is really, again, really interesting. We're going to see this again in Surah 13, you know, but it's where, you know, where God is like using the previous revelations as part of an oath. Like these are proofs,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it ends, the surah ends with وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَسَبِّحْهُ وَإِدْبَارَ النُّجُومِ. So glorify him at night and at the fading of the stars. And now you begin to see this dovetailing of the surahs. So by the stars, and then the next surah, one najmi
Yeah,
idha hawa.
there we go.
By the stars,
Oh.
By the
when it
star.
goes down.
Yeah.
You see the and we'll see this over and over again. The dovetailing of surahs. وَمَا ضَلَّ صَاحِبُكُمْ وَمَا غَوَى. Your companion is neither astray nor being misled.
Yeah.
وَمَا يَنطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى. Nor does he say aught of his own desire. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. It is no less than an inspiration, a revelation sent down to him. عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَى. He was taught by the mighty in power, the angel Gabriel.
Right.
ذُو مِرَّةٍ فَاسْتَوَى. Endued with wisdom, for he appeared in stately form. وَهُوَ فِي الْأُفُقِ الْأَعْلَى. While he was in the highest part of the horizon. Like this is the image of his revelation from the
When
angel.
the prophet first beheld him.
Yes.
That's right.
ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى. Then he approached
And
and came closer. فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ. It was as if of a distance of 2 bows' lengths. أَوْ أَدْنَى. Or even closer than that.
Yeah.
فَأَوْحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ مَا أَوْحَى. So did Allah convey the revelation to his servant, convey what he meant to convey. مَا كَذَبَ الْفُؤَادُ مَا رَأَى. The heart,
Yeah.
the prophet's heart in no way falsified that which he saw. So it wasn't necessarily a physical apparition.
Right.
It was a true vision
From the heart.
from the heart.
Yeah.
And remember, we read that passage where it's sent to his heart.
Yeah. It was sent down upon his
Upon
heart.
his heart. And so, you know, this surah continues like this. We could keep reading it. And it'll end with, or at least verse 55, is that the end? No. Towards the end, it'll say, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكَ تَتَمَارَى. But this is, you know, like a concatenation. It's an indication of what's to come, because in Surah Ar-Rahman, the whole refrain is فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكَ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So,
Can I just, this,
Yeah.
so I was always fascinated while reading the Qur'an and like just like the talk, like you mentioned, Angel Gabriel, and just these, like this is it's so miraculous, right? These miracles. So the Qur'an and the mention of the miracles, because I think, as a society, like we don't believe in miracles. I was at the Umrah, alhamdulillah, and the tour person was talking to us about a night where the Sahaba needed this boulder removed, and they all prayed. There was no cranes and there's no truck gonna come and they woke up and the boulder is gone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala removed it, and I just thought about how I don't have that faith. That most of the time I don't sit and think I'm gonna pray, and it's such a disservice to the relationship that Allah has promised us as human beings. If we could just, go beyond the limits that we've placed on God and ourselves, in our relationship with God.
But I think our inability to see miracles doesn't mean that the miracles aren't happening.
Yes.
I think it's just that we're not looking for them.
We're not allowing ourselves to look for them.
Even this college, right? It's miraculous that we're even here having this conversation. I can remember after 6 months of raising funds in between payroll cycles to keep the college open and to keep everyone paid. And I didn't tell you guys about this when it was happening.
But now we are telling the world.
Yeah. But it was because I didn't want everyone to freak out. But I was literally going out and raising money in between payroll cycles to keep everyone paid and keep the college open and keep moving. And at one point, like I felt like I had exhausted all resources and like every rock had been turned over. And I came in that morning. It was Brother Randall and me, and I said, Randall, I don't know what to do now. Like we still have, it was like there was a little bit of a stretch that we still needed to survive in order until we came into some funds. And I said, I don't know what to do. And so we were just like, okay, let's just breathe and trust in God. And then I was checking the mail that morning and I said, Randall, there's some mail here and it looks like it might be checks. And it turned out it was our employee retention tax benefit or whatever from the government. And I've never associated the IRS with miracles before. but it was the timing of it. And then I was like, oh, and Randall, here's another one. And
Wow.
suddenly that whole stretch that we needed was covered. And it wasn't as my scripture teacher, who's still alive, Father Murphy, God bless him, as he taught us, it's not so much that God just creates these things like out of nothing, but like the falling of the walls of Jericho. It's true that Jericho was built on a fault, but the fact that the walls crumbled right at that moment was the timing.
And I have to say that speaking of timing, this is completely unscripted, but the next surah begins, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. The hour draws nigh, and the moon is split into the miracle of the Prophet.
Yeah.
And we see these miracles that appear in Revelation, but remember, they were never pointed to say, now look at this miracle and believe in this Prophet. It was just an affirmation for those who already believed,
Right.
and a confirmation of those who refused to acknowledge it, that they fell further into their denial. But the real miracle of the Prophet is the Qur'an, but there are these other miracles, and this surah begins, the Qamar, with the splitting of the moon miracle into.
Yeah.
And وَإِن يَرَوْا آيَةً, and it mentions, but if they see a sign,
They turn away.
they turn away and say this is but transient magic.
Yeah.
And so people will see the same thing, but they will
They won't see it as miraculous.
they will interpret it
Yeah,
differently.
they'll interpret it their own way.
Right. And the refrain in this surah is وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ, because multiple times, I think 4 times, that we have made the Qur'an easy by way of a reminder. It's not difficult. فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. So who will take heed? That's Al-Qamar. And then we come to Surah Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman.
So, my suggestion.
Yes.
Break time? No, we've received a message from our dear brother Masood, and I think that maybe we need to take another break, and maybe we'll just have a third and final part tonight, because tomorrow is still a busy day for many. But I just want to say, give a shout out to my brothers Masood and my brother Jonathan, who's not here, because if it weren't for the technical expertise of our IT crew and our media crew, we would never have had a Ramadan Unscripted. And so I just want to let everybody know, and my brother Bahadur is here tonight, also helping with the cameras, and he's helping with pretty much everything else that's happening here at the college. And I just want to acknowledge the fact that Ramadan Unscripted isn't just a couple of us. It's been a whole group effort, and really the most praiseworthy efforts are the ones that are not on camera. That are really quietly, humbly, competently, expertly making sure that everything is working properly. And so I'm looking at my brother Bahadur, my brother Masood right now, and thanks to you, brother. So
let's say a prayer for Brother Jonathan, who was in an accident.
Yes.
I'm looking to say he's doing fine, but keep Jonathan Whitaker in your prayers for a quick and complete recovery.
affectionately known here in the house as JB, brother JB. And but absolutely, we'll pray for Jonathan's swift and full recovery, and we hope and pray that somehow, some way, the positivity and the love and the luminosity of what we're doing might help, brighten the world just a little bit through.
So it's 12:05, 12:06. Should we 12:07? Should we come back at 12:17?
Yes, 10
for
more
the final
minutes.
round.
For Surah Ar-Rahman and whatever's beyond, but
Okay.
I don't think that we can go all the way to Fajr tonight.
We can do some jewels.
We'll do
in
some
the next
jewels.
hour. 10 minutes, and we'll be back. And post it. Tell your friends. Put it on your list.
Yes.
That we're still around for one last hour of Ramadan Unscripted. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow.
Alaikum assalam.
Ramadan Unscripted is back for a third and final hour in this marathon final night of the blessed month of Ramadan. And we are now, we finally found our way to Surah 55, Surah Ar-Rahman, which is, if we're allowed to have favorite chapters, this is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah.
Ar-Rahman.
Yeah.
علم القرآن خلق الإنسان وعلمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. The mizan there has, in one Qur'an session, 3 different kind of levels of meaning.
Wow.
Yeah. There's the cosmic, was samaa, and then there's the moral, the maybe the ecological, like when you transgress
right.
it
Yeah.
upsets, and then there's the economic in business and trade.
Okay, so we're talking about the balance here.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm gonna walk through the English. So, in the name of God, who is the loving nurturer of the creation, is how I like to translate Ar-Rahman, and the all-compassionate. Ar-Rahman, the all-compassionate, or the loving nurturer of the creation, who taught the Qur'an, or made known the Qur'an, who created the human being, and taught the human being that which makes everything clear. Al-Bayan. Some say speech, or some say reason, but who taught the human being that which makes everything clear. How the sun and the moon are in a carefully calculated course, and how some say how the star and the tree bow down in prostration before God, but some interpreters say the herb and the tree bow down in prostration before God, and how God raised the heavens and established the balance. Therefore, do not transgress the balance, and uphold the weights with equity, and do not cheat the balance. In a way, I've always thought of Surah Ar-Rahman as kind of the surah of right relationship, because it's in a way, as we read into the surah, it's going to show all the bounties that God has given us, and is asking us, so which of your Lord's bounties will you deny? And so the idea is that our appropriate relationship with God is a relationship of gratitude. God is so benevolent and God is so generous that our relationship with God is one of gratitude, and our relationship, obviously, to the creation is one of balance, and our relationship to one another is one of balance. And so, and balance, of course, means that there's no superiority. And balance is always changing. And so, I love this idea that balance is a dance, and it's a constant, healthy-minded reactivity to whatever's happening. And so, talk about the levels of the mizan. I like that a lot.
Start with verse 9. وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ. Weigh with justice and do not fall short in the balance. So when you're in trade, doing dealings, don't cheat each other. If you do that, then you go to the next level. أَلَّا تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ. You'll mess up kind of an ecological balance. And then وَالسَّمَاءَ رَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانِ. And then that'll lead to a disorder in the cosmos.
Right, and so God raised the heavens and established the balance.
So there's a cosmic balance, there's an ecological balance, and then there's a balance in trade and
human interaction.
The scales
Yeah.
of economy.
Yeah.
A kind of just economy. That was one way it was rendered to me.
No, I like it. And the balance is on all three levels.
On all three levels. And then if you look at Ar-Rahman, so Rahman is, we don't differentiate between God's attributes, but it's a foremost attribute, right? Bismillah Ar-Rahman. Qulillah awid'u Ar-Rahman. Say Allah or call him by Ar-Rahman. Huwa Allahu alladhi la ilaha illahu alimul ghaybi wa shahada huwa Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. And then Al-Malikul Quddus Salam. Rahman is always, so you have this attribute, and then of all the things that could be taught, the highest teaching is
Qur'an.
Allama al-Qur'an. Of all the things that could be created, the highest creation is Khalaqal
Insan,
Insan.
the human being.
And then of all of our faculties, that which distinguishes us from all other creatures is eloquent speech. Allamahul Bayan.
Wow.
This is, I wish I could take credit for it, but it's again Dr. Israr.
Dr. Asrar, God bless him.
And then you know what he would say? He would say, and then An Uthman ibn Affan. Like it rhymes. Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaq al-Insan, Allama al-Bayan. Wa an Uthman ibn Affan, khayrukum man ta'allama al-Quran wa allamahu. That's a hadith.
The best of you is the one who learns the Quran and teaches it. Yeah.
On the authority of Uthman ibn Affan,
Yeah.
who narrated this hadith.
That's beautiful.
So it's a nice kind of reading of this, and obviously the grand refrain, which first comes in verse number 13.
Yeah.
فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Which then of your Lord's blessings
Would the two of you,
will the two of you deny? Humans and jinn.
humans and jinn. So there's a duality here in this verse.
I didn't
So this
know
is
that.
addressed not just to humankind, but to also the other free people of the creation, that it would be the jinn, right? And
Right.
who are invisible to most of us,
Right.
but are created, as the Quran says, out of smokeless fire.
Right. Now, we could, it's mindful that this is our last hour.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I would just want to point out verse 26 and 27.
Okay.
Which is my absolute, if you can have a absolute all-time favorite.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Kullu man alayha fan.
Yeah,
That all in the earth will perish.
will perish.
Wa yabqa wajhu rabbik. And what will remain is your Lord's face.
Yeah.
Dhul jalali wal ikram. Full of majesty and bounty and honor.
فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ.
And which of your Lord's favors will you both deny?
Yeah. And so this surah is, after it enumerates all of these blessings, all of these wondrous things in nature, it's a litany really of God's blessings and God's beneficence and benevolence. And then in the middle there it says, and everything is perishing. Except for the face of your
For
Lord.
your face of your Lord.
Yeah.
And the next surah begins, إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ. When the event inevitable cometh to pass.
Yeah, that's Judgment Day, right?
That's Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And there will be no soul entertain falsehood concerning its coming. And it talks about apocalyptic scenes about this last day.
Yeah.
And that human beings will divide it into three categories. وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. In verse 7, you will be sorted into three classes. فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ.
Yeah.
Those on the right, companions of the right hand. And then وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ. And then it'll say وَمَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ وَمَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ. And what will be, what will be these companions of the left
Of the
and
left
of the right?
hand or the right hand.
And then the third will be, so you have the right and the left, and then in verse 10, وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. And the foremost, ahead of both of them, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. These ones will be the ones that were brought near to God. فِي جَنَّاتِ النَّعِيمِ. So it's a beautiful opening, and its ending is just, you know, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. This is verse number 75. I swear by the mawaqi' an-nujum, where the stars set or where they're located, like the position of the stars. And if you read, remember we referred to that book by that astronomer, The Six Numbers, where everything is in absolute balance, right? And so the gravitational kind of, you know, the locations of the stars are really, really cosmically significant in terms of how they balance, you know, the forces that are repelling the universe and also trying to bring it together through gravity. And so this is an awesome oath. وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. If you knew, awesome, this oath. And what is being sworn upon? إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is indeed a most honorable Qur'an, in a well-guarded book. This is the same, you know, the preserved tablet. لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. None shall touch them but those who are purified. A revelation from the Lord of the worlds. Is it such a message that you would scorn?
Or treat it lightly.
Hold in light esteem. And how, in return for livelihood you are given, can you deny it? وَتَجَعُونَ رِزْقَكُمْ, meaning you make it your livelihood to deny it. Like you profit off of your denial. And now this is just the, you know, when at the end of life, when the soul of a dying person, you know, comes up to his throat, and you know, if anyone has witnessed like the last moments of a living person, it's and it's describing this. وَأَنْتُمْ حِينَئِذٍ تَنْظُرُونَ, and you gaze on. وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ, we are nearer to him at that moment than you.
You don't see
Though
it.
you don't see us. And if you are not to be judged, or if you are exempt from future being taken into account, if you think you have the power really, and we don't have the power, تَرْجِعُونَهَا.
Return the soul to the body.
Call the soul back when it's being taken. If you are true in your claim of being independent, if what you say is true. And then it goes back to those three classes. Then as for those who are muqarrabeen,
Near to God.
those who are near to God, فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ وَجَنَّةُ نَعِيمٍ. He will have rest and ease and a garden of bliss. And وَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ, and of the companions of the right hand, فَسَلَامٌ لَكَ مِنْ أَصْحَابِ الْيَمِينِ. So peace be unto thee from the companions of the right hand. وَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُكَذِّبِينَ الضَّالِّينَ. But if he is of those who denied the truth and went astray, فَنُزُلٌ مِنْ حَمِيمٍ. He will be welcomed with scalding water. وَتَصْلِيَةُ جَحِيمٍ. You will burn in hell. إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينِ. This is the certain truth. فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. So celebrate with praises, glorify the name of your Lord, the Supreme. Now look again, the dovetail.
Here we go. Surah Al-A'la.
So, no, it is not
hadith.
But look at the dovetail. So it ends with فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ, and glorify the name of your Lord, the Supreme. And the 10 next surahs, 6 of them begin with سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ or يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ, and these are together, they're called the musabbihats. And so the dovetail, right, it ends فَسَبِّحْ, so glorify, and then it begins سَبَّحَ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And Hadid, oh God, we could spend the night with Al-Hadid.
You know, I'm just wondering, in Al-Waqi'ah, you know, I think it's just important to mention, you know, when we read, you know, the Quranic references to light and darkness, and when we read the references to right hand and left hand, that this is not about denigrating people who are left-handed, you know, and it's not about denigrating people who have darker hues of skin or darker shades of skin. That these are kind of symbolic orientations or symbolic assignments that so lefties don't have to be afraid of being sent to this terrible hell or hellish torment. I think it's just important to be clear that left hand and right hand here is really symbolic of the good and the bad. And of course, in many societies, including Middle Eastern society and traditional Arab society, the right hand is always the clean hand. And so the right hand is the hand that you extend to shake and not so with the left. But just to clarify that. Sorry to bring us down, but I thought that I would just make that really clear.
So in Al-Hadid, just jewels, verse number 3. This is the only place in the Qur'an where the attributes of God are separated with a waw. Everywhere else they come, you know, they have the idafa and Surah Ghafir, but otherwise they come Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, together without any kind of and.
Right.
But here it's separated. Huwa al-awwalu wal-akhiru.
He is the first and the last.
And the last.
But these are pairs.
Well, yeah. Wal-zahir wal-batin.
The manifest and the hidden.
And the hidden. But there's that, the wow.
Yeah.
And it just
You have a theory for that?
gives you pause.
No.
Well, I mean, why?
I think it's because, anybody else have a guess? I think it's because you can't, with regard to these attributes, because these are opposites in a way, so
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other, right? So you can't have God being known as the first without being also known as the last. Or you can't refer to God as the manifest, meaning it's visible, yani, without being the hidden and the internal.
Okay, I have a theory.
Okay, what's your theory?
So if God is the first, God is the last. Those are kind of two discrete points, but He's the first and the last is encompassing everything in between.
Right.
And there's nothing outside of that. And the innermost and the outermost,
Yeah.
what is the,
Yeah.
what else is there? You know, what is there
Beyond the outer.
beyond in and out, you know? There's nothing outside of outness, and there's nothing more inside than in, and whatever's in between. I think those are very kind of mystical sounding things, but to me, it's just like comprehensive.
That's a great point. It's almost like language is trying to explain something that's beyond language,
Yeah.
you know?
Can I read the explanation here?
Yes.
Yeah.
God is eternal with everything before or after him. He is uncontained in time and place. The visible existence is the manifestation of his names and the origin or source of all creation, which is invisible and spiritual, is also contained in his knowledge. So God encompasses all creation in his knowledge and power, and he himself is eternal. So it's like actually
Yeah.
what you kind of sense of.
Very nice. Is this her tafsir you're reading?
Yeah,
Wow, that was beautiful, Stephanie.
There's a lot of imagery in this surah about the hereafter and crossing the bridge and the light shining from the believers, and a dialogue between those who are on the inside and the outside.
Right.
So the word batin appears in the inside in a different way in the surah, but towards the end, starting verse 20, it's got a sequence on the life of this world is la'ib, and this was once explained to me as stages of life. The la'ib, when you're little, you play. This is verse 20.
Yeah.
Well, lahab, then you want to be entertained. Like everything to you is a play initially. Even the fire, you don't understand. But then lahab, you want to be entertained. if you get bored, you need to be entertained, and the child needs to be given something. Wallahu. And then it's, pomp, wazina. And so you're in this, state of adornment. You want brand names, and you're looking at your hair and endless hours in the mirror. And then وَتَفَاخُرُ بَيْنَكُمْ. And then you're always in a state of comparing yourself to someone else.
Yeah.
I've got this, and what does the other one have?
Yeah.
And then you don't even care about anyone else. You just counting your, وَتَكَاثُرٌ. You just want more and more. فِي الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَوْلَادِ. And so it's like rain. It falls from the sky, and the crop grows, but then it becomes stubble and vanishes when the season changes. This is the life. And so, وَمَا الْحَيَاةُ الدُّنْيَا, that the life of this world is nothing but an illusory pleasure.
Yeah.
So it's a huge warning, and we're being told to strive to God's forgiveness. But verse 22 and 23 are really perplexing, where it gives us this sense of the life of this world, but then it says, no misfortune can happen on earth or in your own souls, but it is recorded in a decree before we bring it into existence. Truly, that is easy for God. And this is so that you may not despair over matters that pass you by. Oh, I missed it. Nor exult over things bestowed. Oh, I got it. I did it. Don't exult. And if you lose it, don't despair. For God doesn't love the vain, glorious boaster. And this is the one who is covetous and commends covetousness to others. And so whoever turns back from God's way, verily, he is free of all needs and worthy of all praise. It's a really interesting.
No, it's deep, and it pulls us back into that mystery of God's decree, and our choices within that decree.
Right.
Or as sometimes is translated. I don't know if it's William Chittick who translated it this way, but the mystery of God's measuring out.
Right.
But it's a mystery, really.
Yeah.
And we read in other parts of the Qur'an, that nothing will strike us except for what God has written for us. So there's this sense that God knew it. God knew everything, and it was already recorded, and yet we find ourselves choosing, and we understand that we are accountable for that choosing. And so there's no way for us to rationally, at least in my view, there's no way for us to just rationally make complete sense out of this. We just have to accept that both have to be true at the same time. That we make choices and we're responsible for those choices, but God's in total control and everything was written. Somehow both have to be true.
It's reconciliation.
Yeah. Al-awwal wal-akhir.
But it's the willingness to live in the tension of a mystery. It's a paradox, really.
Yeah, and we're back to it. And so it gives you this, and then it brings you just straight back into the world, where verse 25 will say that we have sent our messengers with clear signs, and we have sent with them scripture and the balance.
And
the mizan. Yeah, and the purpose of this is so that human beings would stand by justice. لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ.
Yeah.
And then, it says we have sent these books, وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ. And then it says, وَأَنزَلْنَا, again we have sent down, al-hadid, iron. In it is great power. But also, sometimes you say, ba's, material for mighty war. But also benefit, like for industry. So that God may test and make it known who helps him.
And his messengers.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh. And his messenger in the unseen. Inna Allaha qawiyyun aziz. And even with these materials, you don't have the power. God has the power, and he is exalted. This is
And God is what? And God is clearly watching what we do with that iron and with those resources.
And you know that this is one of the miracles as well. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدِ, because the iron you find on the crust came from the meteorites. Because all the iron that was there before was molten and it sank to the core. We have an iron core that rotates. That's what gives us the magnetic field. But the iron that's on the crust comes from the heavens. وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدِ.
Like the rain
Yeah.
from the sky.
You're from
Like
from
meteors.
rocks in space,
Mm.
meteors that fall onto the earth, and they have iron in it, and that's where all the iron that we extracted through mines comes from.
Yeah.
So
It's beautiful. That's a beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not from the earth. We thought it's from the earth, but it's not.
well, it gets embedded in the earth
Yeah,
in mines,
later.
and then we extract it. Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion? Because I know our time is ticking.
Yes.
Would it be okay for us to just go each choose one jewel from what remains of the Qur'an to share? I know. I hate to be a party pooper.
Yeah.
How are we doing? I
Yeah.
think we're in the third hour now, and we're already at 12:43 past 12. So I would love to hear from everyone. Like it doesn't have to be, we don't have to say that, it's my absolute favorite, but just like if there's one thing that you would like to share tonight as a way of celebrating the Qur'an and as a way of inviting people to engage with the Qur'an and really doing our best in this third hour to give the Qur'an its due, as Dr. Asrar, may God be merciful to him, would say. What would that be? That's a tough question, I know.
Yeah.
Because there's some beautiful, beautiful, short, poetic, gorgeous, and rich surahs still ahead of us.
There is one I read recently of, and this relates back to the context that we've been talking about, in
Yeah.
the context of like the situation and when these verses were revealed. Something I read about Surah Al-Kawthar, so further along, it was just so powerful and so moving because this surah was revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, when his son died, and he's carrying his dead son in his arms, and he leaves his home, and the people are mocking him, and it's just, I'm just, as a parent, just thinking about that moment when you're just out there and you're so vulnerable, and your child is gone and is in your hands lifeless, and people are mocking you. And this is the Prophet, peace be upon him. And he is just, I haven't experienced the loss of a child, astaghfirullah. But I can't even imagine just being just completely vulnerable. There's nothing else, right? You're just standing there with your lifeless child, and I just couldn't help but think of the images coming from like Gaza and the parents just holding their dead children.
Yeah.
And he's being mocked, and then Allah gives him these words.
Okay,
and
let's
again,
take us to it.
That loving
Surah 108.
Surah 108, Surah Al-Kawthar. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We have surely given you abundance. And it's like Allah is just telling the Prophet, this is the life. This is life. We have given you a beyond life, And there might be a significance to we. I know that sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers
That's right.
to the we, so I'm not sure about the complexity with the we right here. But so pray to your Lord and offer inside. It's just so simple. This 3-verse surah just revealed to the Prophet, and I'm not sure if this is the most vulnerable time, but just thinking as a parent where you're like, this is it, my child is gone, and people are mocking you and laughing, like this is what your Lord, this is your Lord, And so this was just something when I read about the context of the surah and when it was revealed, it just completely moved me. And again, just thinking about the images coming out of Gaza, may Allah have mercy and all those rules.
So read it one more time through.
Yes.
I think let's just soak that in.
We have surely given you abundance. So pray to your Lord and offer in sacrifice. Indeed, your chief hater is the real childless. And that is referencing the person who was ridiculing the Prophet, peace be upon him, that he is the real childless.
Truly thine enemy shall be the one without posterity. Yeah, knowing the context, it makes it more striking.
Yeah.
And just that one line, like, we have given you abundance.
Yeah.
Don't spend too much time right here in this moment. There is something beyond, and we promise it to you, you know.
Yeah, lovely.
That's
Thanks for sharing that.
And that also shows how sometimes the context of a particular surah really brings out the meaning and really brings out the power of, even that one's just 3 verses, right?
Yeah, it's the shortest surah.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me share, Dr.
That's
Janae.
beautiful.
That's something that's always, when I read that, and that's the shorter surah, and that's the one I use
That's
the
great.
most.
Okay, you're good.
So now when
That's good.
but now when I recite
That's
it,
good.
it just holds something so
Yeah,
different.
Thank you, I didn't know about this. Wow.
yeah.
And that's when it was revealed to him. Again, that loving, like, that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't forget, like, just who else can we receive comfort from that can do what we need it to do in those moments that we have, you know? Like, we ask of it from human beings, or we ask of it from our work, or from other worldly things, but this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to him, like, you are promised abundance.
Yeah. I can really tell that for you, the Qur'an is a deeply emotional book, right? It's really, like, you really feel it. That's beautiful. Okay, any other jewels that we'd like to hold up to the light so we can appreciate the refraction and reflection of the light?
Well, I'm drawn to Surah Al-Mulk because it really, to me, shows like the majesty of God. And if anybody knows me, I am fascinated by natural disasters and, you know, kind of the mysteries. And in this Mus'haf, there's a little intro that says, the fundamental idea running through the whole of this surah is man's inability to ever encompass the mysteries of the universe with his earthbound knowledge, and hence his utter dependence on guidance through divine revelation. And so it's full of these examples of, and oh my gosh, it gives me goosebumps, especially in light of what's just happened in the last 24 hours. Can you ever feel secure that he who is in heaven, this is number ayah 16, will not cause the earth to swallow you up, when lo and behold, it begins to quake? I mean, just look at what's happened. There's massive earthquake in the world. Or can you ever feel secure that he who is in heaven will not let loose against you a deadly storm wind? Whereupon you would come to know how true my warning was. I mean, it's just so powerful. And then, I mean, these are like these frightening images, tornadoes, you know, hurricanes. And then just a little bit farther down, have they then never beheld the birds above them, spreading their wings and drawing them in? None but the most gracious upholds them. For verily he keeps all things in his sight. Like, it's such a artistic touch, right? And it's so gentle. You see birds just flying around, and then, you know, the capacity to be destroyed by the same wind. And then the last ayah. Say to those who deny the truth, what do you think? If all of a sudden all your water were to vanish underground, who but God could provide you with water from new unsullied springs? I mean, we're so dependent on these resources, and it's just, those kind of ayahs are really powerful to me, because it gets right at the core of humankind's attempt to control the world, and it's all a mystery, really. We can't control any of it.
Wow. It reminds me of when Mahan was reading about Qarun, and he was sharing on Ramadan Unscripted that he was worried that the house in South Bend would be swallowed up while he was reading it, that he had that feeling of insecurity, like a sinkhole could open anywhere, anytime.
We think we're firm.
Yeah, but we're not.
We're not. And I showed you that article, which was actually sent to me by none other than Stephanie,
Oh,
where it happened somewhere in the world
yeah.
in the past 24 hours. 4 people were
Swallowed up? Wow.
They were missing for 3 days, and they found out they were in this deep pit that just had opened up and taken them in with their vehicle.
And even as you said earlier when we were talking about Judgment Day, which the Qur'an is always describing as being imminent, but the fact is that as individuals, like, our death is imminent. And so even though we may not live to see the Judgment Day, like before we die, but all of us are going to die. And that could be any moment, any
Tonight.
day, any night.
Yeah.
And so we have to live in remembrance of that. And I've always thought that the remembrance of death doesn't make us morbid. It just makes us live more vividly. And it makes us appreciate our moments and not squander them the way we do or we would if we thought that we had an infinite number of moments.
Right.
And I guess maybe that's the part of the delusion of human beings, is that we think we're going to live forever.
Yes.
And we think that, and we kind of deceive ourselves that way, and we think we're going to live forever, and
Yeah.
but really,
Yeah.
we're just passing through.
Right. So we're kind of moving through these last surahs. There's that one that says, "Woe to those who deal in fraud,"
Yeah,
right? Who give more, who give less when they're asked, but ask for more when they ask. And don't they know that they will be raised again?
yeah.
That's the message.
Al-Sam, what about you, or Ozlan? Do you have a?
Yeah, but I.
Surah Al-Inshirah. Surah
Oh, that
Al-Inshirah.
Okay.
Alam Nashrah.
Okay. Can you give everyone the number of that one?
Let me see. It does not appear in
Alam nashrah laka sadrak.
Yeah.
Shar 94.
94.
94. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم نشرح لك صدرك. Have we not expanded thee, thy breast? So the breast here is symbolically the seat of knowledge and the highest feeling of love and affection. ووضعنا عنك وزرك, and removed from thee the burden. الذي أنقض ظهرك, the which did gall the back. ورفعنا لك ذكرك, and raised high the esteem. فإن مع العسر يسرا. So I like this. So with every difficulty there is a relief.
Yeah.
And Allah repeat it again. إن مع العسر يسرا.
Yeah.
With every difficulty there is a relief. There is a relief. So if there is a difficulty, then Allah will remove it, and there is a relief after the difficulty.
Can I
So
say something
with-
about that? It's not after, actually.
It's with.
With
Yeah.
with.
So whenever you're having the hardship, also God gives you the ease with
Yes.
it, actually. So it's not actually after. Don't expect it for after. Actually, you have the ease within the hardship. I think that's how
That's
I read it.
interesting.
Yeah.
إن مع العسر
With-
يسرا.
yeah.
With the hardship.
Yeah. And إن مع العسر يسرا.
Sometimes we don't look at the hardship as something that is something we need.
Yes.
Yeah, Allah makes
Just-
something like hard, but there is something in it. Good.
Yeah.
We don't see it sometimes.
Yeah.
Actually, most of the time we don't see it.
Yeah.
We just recognize the bad or the difficulty, then the good things from the.
Yeah. It reminds me of the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And so the hardship is actually making you stronger.
But hardship also creates, opportunities for our real friends to emerge. And
Yes.
so if they didn't have the opportunity of our hardship, maybe they wouldn't be able to come to us with the tenderness and the friendship and the healing presence. We wouldn't have tasted that otherwise. And so it may be that when we're going through these things, it's creating an opportunity for other people to step up and for other people to really rise to like a level of human compassion and friendship and service that otherwise they wouldn't have. And so there's a way in which difficult situations show the luminosity of other people in our life sometimes.
Plus, we will get experience with the difficulty. So for next time, we have this experience, so we can handle it maybe. Something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
So-
the immune system when you have the
Yeah.
flu, so the second the flu, it's going to be less than because your
Oh.
immune
That's true,
system is
yeah.
already has it,
Yeah.
So the difficulty provides experience.
Yeah, and the last two verses are also there. So when thou art free, like
فإذا فرغت فانصب.
still exert yourself
Yeah.
and let thy desire be for thy Lord.
وإلى ربك فارغب. And the Lord turn all the attention.
Beautiful.
Shukran.
Shukran, yeah. Aslan, you had something to
I-
share.
I'm not gonna read the Arabic
Okay.
version, but Al-Maun,
Oh, good. This is a great one.
in the name of God. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
107.
Yeah, 107.
Yeah, second to last. No. It's the fifth.
No, 107.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered one who denies the less judgment? That is he who repels the orphan and does not urge the feeding of the destitute. And woe to those worshippers, denying the judgment, those who are unmindful in their prayers, those who want to be seen and noted for their acts of worship, yet deny all assistance to their fellow men.
You know how I often translate this is so powerful. Sometimes how I translate this is, have you seen the one who turns religion into a lie? Right?
Yeah.
أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. This is so that's the one, right, who refuses the orphan and does not call people to feed the hungry. So woe to those people who are saying their prayers but are totally clueless as to what their prayers mean. Those who are doing all the ritual things to look like they're, being pious, and yet they withhold and prevent basic acts of kindness,
Can I read the tafsir here?
Yeah.
The last two verses, together with the succeeding ones, threaten hypocritical people. The hypocrites see no good in the prayer and do not fear God when they do not pray. If they sometimes pray, they're proud of it. They are careless about whether they pray on time and how they pray. They do not pursue God's good pleasure and approval in their prayers. Rather, they expect some worldly advantages from them.
And sometimes it becomes this rhythmic movement exercise that's just physical.
I question myself sometimes. Like
Yeah,
I'm
me
like,
too.
am I a hypocrite? Am I like,
Yeah.
in front of my kids, like I try to show them. I try to be a good example. I'm like, am I being actually a hypocrite by doing this? Trying to show them I'm doing like on time my prayers, like but it's like I want to show them like the discipline so they can do the same things. Like I question myself, am I really doing this for God or inshallah.
But if you're
Allah
doing
make our
it,
intention.
if you're doing it for the benefit of your children,
Yeah.
then that to me is also for God, right?
Yeah.
That's the way, because God doesn't need the prayer, but you're doing this. But even that is a loving, it's an act of love, right? Yeah.
And I think Surah Al-Qadr also, it's the one of the, surah, because now we are in the last 10 days of Ramadan.
Yes.
So
The
Surah
last night
Al-Qadr-
of Ramadan, yeah.
last night. And Surah Al-Qadr, one of the special surah
Yeah.
also.
But you know Surah Al-Ma'un also, just final thought about it is, it makes me feel like, usually when we say our prayers and then we've communed sort of vertically with God, we've worshipped God, we've done the prayer, and then prayer always ends with the taslim, right? With Assalamu alaikum to the right and Assalamu alaikum to the left. Surah Al-Ma'un almost makes me think that once you say Assalamu alaikum and Assalamu alaikum, your prayer's not finished because you haven't fed the poor yet. Your prayer's not finished because you haven't taken care of the orphan yet. Your prayer's not finished because there are people suffering. And so the Assalamu alaikum is really just the beginning of prayer. And Surah Al-Ma'un makes me feel like if I'm not saying Assalamu alaikum, okay, where's the orphan? Okay, who's hungry? If I'm not doing that, then I'm turning my prayer into a lie.
Yeah, prayer in action, kind of like you have to practice the prayer, kind of. You have to put it in action.
Right.
It's like
Because it's not
people
finished.
Like feel prayer, feel dua.
Yeah.
You say, I don't know how to translate that, but yeah, you have to put,
Yeah, we have to live it.
Mhm.
And so, like, woe to those people who are saying their prayers. Like, some people have said to me, no, Timothy, this is only referred to people who are not saying their prayers. And I'm saying, well, it says right here, people who are, like, this is the ism fa'al, right? Musallin, people who are actually, woe to those people who are doing their prayers, and yet are totally clueless as to what their prayers mean, really. Because they're not feeding the orphan, they're not concerned about the orphan, they're not calling people to feed the hungry. So, like, what's the point?
How did you translate it again?
Have you seen the one who turns religion into a lie?
Who turns religion into a lie.
This is kadhaba yukadhibu, to like fa'ala yufa'ilu, taf'il, takdhib.
I like that translation.
And the other surah that talks about takdhib ad-din is Surah Al-Tin, right?
Is that your?
I kind of want to choose all of them, but Surah Al-Tin is lovely for so many reasons. Actually, so many of these are lovely for so many reasons, but and also just the sound of Surah Al-Tin is so nice. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَتِينِ وَزَيْتُونِ وَطُورِ السِّنِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ فَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونٍ فَمَا يُكَذِّبُكَ بَعْدُ بِالدِّينِ. So what after this will turn your religion into a lie? أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِأَحْكَمِ الْحَاكِمِينَ. But God is the best of judges. But by the fig and the olive, right? So this traditionally is really, again, the Qur'an is using other scriptures and other faith traditions and its own as the oath swearing. And by Mount Sinai and by this city, this secure city, meaning Mecca, right? So by all these revelations, we have indeed created the human being in the best of all possible forms, the most beautiful form, and then we have abased him to the lowest of the low, except for those who believe and who work acts of righteousness, for they have an unmeasured reward. So what after this will turn religion into a lie? Like, isn't it simple? God is certainly the most worthy of judges, or the judge of judges. So it's almost
It's like a question. Alaysa Allah.
Alaysa, well, isn't he? Yeah.
Is he not?
Is he not? Yeah.
And they say you should respond when you hear it, like Bala.
Fala. Oh,
in
nice.
prayer. You might hear people sometimes, if it's recited in prayer,
And they'll say fala.
Bala.
Oh, bala.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is the affirmative response to Alaysa.
That's beautiful. But I, to me, this is it's simple. It's like one of those Quranic verses that makes Islam so simple. Like, it's about believing in God and doing good.
I've also heard this, but I see it also here in studying Qur'an, that the fig and the olive and the Turi Sinin and
Sinai.
Hadha Balad al-Amin, this city of peace, it also has symbolic meaning. So for the land where Noah's Ark kind of rested, and then where Jesus you know, the
Mount
olive,
of Olives.
Oh.
and then the Mount Sinai for Moses, and this city for Muhammad,
Yeah.
Prophet Muhammad.
So it's like all the revelations.
We have created human beings in the best of modes.
Yeah.
This is
Wow,
the prophets.
this is.
But then we have
incredible.
reduced them to the lowest of the low.
And so we're, you know, so our life, and I think both of those 2 points, in a way, it's sort of like, sometimes I frame it like we're in this world between the gardens, right? We got kicked out of the first one, and there's another garden to which we're going, but we're stuck in this world between the gardens. And it's almost like the kind of transformative mechanism of religion, right? It's that, you know, we're the lowest of the low now, but what's going to get us back up to the next garden level, right? Is believing and living righteously, right? It's almost as if revelation becomes a kind of a ladder back to what real human nature, our true human nature. It's restorative. And so this is, to me, it also speaks to the restorative nature of revelation and prophecy. That this is really about us becoming real human beings again. Because we lost that, and we're, at this point, we're kind of not really the human being that God created us to be. And this is the way we get there.
Lovely.
You have the last word. Ramadan Unscripted. This was your crazy idea in the first place. So you have the last word.
Before the last word,
Oh.
can I just say one thing about Surah Ikhlas?
Yeah.
Because I heard it in a halaqah. My friend's mom, she has passed away. May Allah have mercy on her soul and give her the ajr of the knowledge that she's shared and that we hold dear. She did just beautiful this reflection on Surah Ikhlas pertaining to the question that we will be asked, you know, who is your Lord? And she said the answer is in Surah Ikhlas. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Say, He is Allah, the only one, Allah the everlasting. He did not beget, and is not begotten, and none is His equal.
Yeah.
And we recite this, and it's so short, and I just thought it was Allah's mercy for it to be such a short surah, for us to be able to easily just retain it and recite it and keep it ever present on our tongue and our souls as a response to this question that we will be asked. I'm sorry, that was all I had to add.
Beautiful. And before your final word,
The last word was
yes,
Lawrence O'Donnell. No pressure.
I want to say a quick shout out to our brother Rashan.
Yes.
Yes,
Our brother Rashan, also American Islamic College, part of our team, designed with brother Jonathan. Brother Jonathan is responsible for this really funky Ramadan script here. But they are the ones who really they designed and ordered these wonderful Ramadan unscripted mugs that we're all using tonight. And I just want to say a shout out to my brothers Rashan and brother JB for making these beautiful mugs that we would love to send you.
Get your mug. Ramadan is ending, but the Qur'an lives on. And keep your spirit renewed throughout the year with your Ramadan unscripted mug. Hopefully we'll be able to bring this to them again
Inshallah.
in future years.
Inshallah.
And maybe with hopefully other more interesting people.
There's still time
And
to get
also,
yours with a donation
When
of
they
$50.
donate, isn't this like a sadaqah jariyah? It's like it's a continuing kind
Yes.
of, like, because it's very educational.
Yes.
Right, and it's on YouTube. So as
for
you
them.
said, as Nasa said in her social media blurb, that you can now binge watch Ramadan Unscripted. Hours and hours of delight for you, inshallah.
Inshallah.
All right, Dr. Mahan.
You know, this is just a very sad moment. I don't know what to do here. My one pick was Al-Ma'un. It's been taken. And so I'm going to go to Al-Hashr, but by quick way of, I'm not going to spend time on anything else, because we've been doing Surah Al-Asr.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at Surah Al-Asr, it's sandwiched between two other surahs. At-Takathur, you know, vying for increase, like in wealth, distracts you. And until you visit the graves. And then the other one is the slanderer, which is woe unto every slandering backbiter who amasses wealth and tallies it. And maybe something, if that's you're obsessed with that, you become, you can be given to slander. And right in between is that Surah Al-Asr, the declining day in this translation. At the end of the day, the business people are counting up their earnings, and that you are in loss. You're not making it. This is not the. So it's just a lovely that three-part sequence. But now I'm going to turn to my jewel.
Okay.
You see how I did that very carefully.
Yeah.
This is Surah number. It's shortly after. We were at Al-Hadid, and then there's Mujadala, which is also Ingrid Mattson begins her book with Mujadala, the one who argues, but the last section of Surah Al-Hashr, starting with verse number. This is Surah number 59. And starting with verse number 18. O you who believe, fear God, or be mindful of God, or reverence God. This is verse number 18. And let every soul consider carefully what it sends ahead for the morrow. وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدٍ. Because really it's the hereafter where we will, what we have sent forth is what we will receive there. In this world, if we work for this world, we will leave it behind in this world. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ, it again repeats this.
Yeah.
And so there's, that emphasis just reaffirms that ultimately it's this inner disposition of restraint and reverence that is also why fasting was prescribed. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ.
Right.
Because God is aware of all that you do. And be not like those who forgot God, and so He made them forget their own selves.
Wow.
And so when we forget God, if you look at the world today, everyone's struggling with their identity. We move from this to that. But we can't pin it down.
Wow.
And Francis Fukuyama, he wrote the book The End of History, which we had a speaker yesterday, Notre Dame. She said it should have been the beginning of history, because it's like everything is moving fast forward, and it's like starting all over. But he wrote another book afterwards that was that history is not actually over, because now it's all about identity, conflicts. And here we are, like, if you forget God, you forget yourselves.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Iqbal was asked, where do you get your philosophy from? And he went to the shelf and he picked up the Qur'an and he said this verse. That if you forget God, you will forget yourselves. Because his philosophy of khudi, like the, khudi pukar buland itna ke har taqdeer se pehle khuda bande ko khud puche bata teri raza kya hai. It's an incredible verse that
I don't even understand Urdu, and I like it. Obviously, it sounds good.
it's elevate your selfhood to the point that before God issues any decree, He asks the servant, tell me what is it you want, so that I can decree it.
So you don't even have to ask.
Yeah. Well, God decrees based
Right.
on what
Right.
what you want. And so who's decreeing? It's just a really lovely, but that's where he gets it from. And if you are like those who forget God, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ, those are those who are rebellious or transgressors. And not equal are the people of the fire and the people of the garden. It is the people of the garden who will achieve felicity.
Yeah.
And this is in part I picked this because of this verse that's coming next.
Yeah.
That were we to have sent this Qur'an down onto a mountain, you would have seen it humble itself, cleave asunder for fear of God. خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. And this reminds me of the Moses verse when he said, I want to see you.
Yes, yes.
And God, Tajalla Rabbuhu lil Jabal. He shown himself on the mountain. And Moses was gazing at the mountain and it crumbled. He didn't even look up, but he fell unconscious. And so the Qur'an is like God's light itself. You would see the mountain humble and crumble. But this is an amthal. These are like examples. It's a parable that we give to humankind. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, so they would think about this. And so, we spent this time with the Qur'an, and you could do this over and over again all your life, and it would never
finish.
It'd never get tired. It'd never finish. You'd always find something new. You would enjoy it every time because you're not the same person. The world isn't the same, and so you read it differently. And if it is a divine text and a revealed text, as we believe, right? This is God's light. It's His word, and that's why we've been sitting here for this month every night, and we've just scratched the surface. Yeah. And then the last 3 verses there are just absolutely glorious, with the names of God. Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu alimul ghaybi wash-shahadati huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illa hu الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. There's this one place in the Qur'an it combines most, like it's the God's attributes in one place.
Yeah, you want to just read that in English for us? And this is a beautiful way to end.
He is God. There is no God other than Him. It is He who knows what is hidden as well as what is in the open. He is the Lord of mercy, the giver of mercy. He is God, there is no God other than Him. The controller, the Holy One, the source of peace, grantor of security, guardian over all, the Almighty, the compeller, the truly great. God is far above anything they consider to be His partner. He is God, the creator, the originator, the shaper. The best names belong to Him. Everything in the heavens and the earth glorifies Him. He is the Almighty, the Wise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sisters, for joining us tonight. This has been such a pleasure. I wish we had been with you the whole month. This was really great and profoundly instructive. And I just want to thank everyone who's been with us online and who, God willing, will be with us as we continue this journey of faith, this journey of hope, this journey of struggle, this journey of education. As I think when you were at Zaytuna, you said, higher education for a higher purpose.
Yeah.
I thought that was such a great slogan, but it's really true. This is not just about getting to your next job. This is about learning to live a life of impact and purpose and positive change. We don't have any illusions that we're going to reshape the world in any kind of permanent way, but we understand very clearly from these 29 nights that we're here to struggle, to struggle for beauty and to struggle for justice and to struggle for what's good and life-giving, and higher education is certainly an important part of that process. And so I feel very blessed to be here with you all. I feel very blessed to have spent these last 29 nights with my brother Mahan.
Yes.
And thank you again for this crazy idea. And I feel like, you know, really I've benefited so much from these nights. So thank you.
We all have.
And thanks to my brothers. Thank other guests.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Viewers.
Oh, yes, of course. Okay, so sorry, I was trying to read a cue from my brother Masood there. And, but also, that's right, we've had other people join us on these nights. Dr. Farial Salim, Ustadha Tahira Ahmed have been with us, and we've really benefited from their insights and their perspectives. And I hope, God willing, that we'll have an opportunity to do this again and to bring many more voices and many more perspectives into it, because as you so rightly said, Mahan, that we've just scratched the surface. And I hope and pray that we'll have an opportunity to go a little bit deeper again and again, inshallah. All right, thanks everyone. God bless you. Ramadan Mubarak. And for those of you who are about to celebrate Eid, Eid Mubarak, may, as we say in Arabic, Kul Aam wa antum bi khair, may each year bring goodness to you and to your families. May God accept your fasting and all of your efforts in whatever form your fasting has taken. May God accept your prayers, all of your beautiful deeds. May God inspire us all to be better and to do more, and to lead lives that are luminous and life-giving and devoted to God and to the creation.
Ameen.
Ameen. Ameen.
All right, Salaam alaikum.